Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Brooke Skylar Richardson. Carroll, Ohio, is home to several families, including the Richardson family. This family consists of Kim and Scott Richardson, who are very involved in their children's lives. Their son, Jackson, loves playing football, while their daughter, Brooke Skylar, commonly known as Skylar, is a cheerleader. Skylar has struggled with an eating disorder since she was very young. Her mother, Kim, first noticed the problem when Skylar was in 6th grade at the age of 12. Skylar's hyper-focus on food and exercise became very apparent when she refused to buy gum because it had more than 5 calories. As a cheerleader, Skylar needs to be light and easy to throw. The pressure to maintain a certain weight makes her battle with weight loss even more difficult. She is constantly preoccupied with her body image and is afraid of gaining weight. Skylar's struggle with her weight and body image began due ring cheerleading practice. In an effort to maintain her weight, she started vomiting after meals. However, this behavior only worsened her problems once practice ended. After that, Skylar's struggle with her weight became more intense. She may experience periods of overeating in a short time, consuming more than her body needs. This is often accompanied by periods of starvation, during which Skylar restricts her food intake or follows a strict diet. Skylar's parents noticed changes in her behavior and became concerned about her health. They tried to express these concerns to her, but whenever the subject was brought up, Skylar became quiet. She did not want to talk about it and always refused any attempts to address her weight changes. Skylar's parents sought help from various professionals, including doctors and therapists, hoping that these interventions would help their daughter reduce her anxiety. After a clinical evaluation, Skylar was diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder. This psychological condition causes individuals to focus excessively on a perceived flaw in their appearance, leading to impairment in daily functioning and distress. In July 2016, during her senior year of high school, Skylar began dating a friend's cousin. However, the relationship did not last, and by January 2017, Skylar had a new boyfriend, a high school student named Brandon. Skylar was in a good mood and appeared to have gained weight. Her parents, Kim and Scott, believed that their daughter's eating disorder had improved. They noticed that she looked healthy and genuinely happy. In February, Skylar chose a tight-fitting evening gown that required a tie. In mid-March, she went on vacation with her family. During the trip, she wore a two-piece swimsuit, and her mother commented that she looked great. Kim believed that her daughter and Brandon were having sex, so she wanted Skylar to start taking birth control pills. She thought this would protect her daughter's health and prevent the risk of an unwanted pregnancy. In mid-April 2017, Skylar went to her mother's gynecologist to get a prescription for birth control pills while her mother, Kim, waited outside the clinic. After seeing the doctor, Skylar left the clinic with tears in her eyes. Kim immediately asked her daughter why she was so sad, and Skylar replied that it was a painful experience for her. Kim believed her daughter was telling the truth, unaware of the real reason behind the tears. During Skylar's visit to her OB/GYN, the doctor informed her that she was about 8 months pregnant. Skylar asked the doctor not to reveal this information to anyone, as she was not ready to share the news with her family. On May 5th, 9 days later, Skylar and her boyfriend Brandon went to prom. Even though Skylar was in the final stages of her pregnancy, she still managed to fit into her prom dress. 2 weeks after Skylar attended the prom, on July 14, 2017, police officers arrived at her home to meet with her parents, Kim and Scott. The officers stated that they needed to talk to Skylar about an incident she may have witnessed and assured her that nothing was wrong. Scott decided to drive Skylar to the police station, where they wanted to question her about an emergency call the police had received from a fertility clinic. Specifically, the doctor had reported that a patient had just given birth and may have buried the baby in the yard. After receiving this notice, the police immediately arrested Skylar and took her to a room for questioning. They did not allow her father to participate in the questioning. Before the questioning began, the police explained her rights to her. The investigator then started asking questions about the phone call from the doctor's office. The caller informed the police that on April 26, a doctor had examined Skylar and concluded that she was pregnant. However, Skylar later revealed to the doctor that the baby was dead and that she had buried the baby in her backyard. During her interview with the police, Skylar recounted a tragic event from her past. On May 7, 2017, she said that she had given birth to a baby girl in the bathroom, but the baby was not breathing and had no heartbeat. Therefore, she decided to bury the baby alone and did not tell anyone about the incident. To do this, Skylar quietly went downstairs, took a garden shovel, and dug a shallow grave in her backyard, where she buried the baby. She then left a vase with flowers at the burial site to mark and remember her deceased child. During a conversation with her parents, Skylar announced that she had chosen the name Annabelle for the baby and revealed that the baby's father was the cousin of a close friend she had dated briefly before meeting Brandon. Crime scene investigators went to the Richardson home to search for the child's remains. They searched the backyard by pulling weeds and sweeping the ground. The police carried out this process meticulously and carefully, removing any debris that might hinder their investigation. After overcoming the difficulties caused by the overgrown vegetation, they were able to collect a significant amount of evidence. After removing the weeds and cleaning the area, the police found several human bones, including skull fragments. These bones were carefully collected and placed in small body bags to preserve the evidence. Investigators ensured that the bones were kept intact. Later, one investigator noted that the bones had a smell, while another had difficulty determining whether they were rocks or human bones due to their small size. At the same time, the coroner confirmed the discovery of hair and small fingernails, but no organs or items that could help identify. After more than 5 hours of questioning, Skylar and her parents were allowed to return home. However, just 6 days after the incident, Skylar was contacted by the police and told that she needed to come to the police station again. To reassure her father, Scott, the police assured her that she would not face any legal action. During Skylar's next meeting with the police, they informed her that they had received new information from the medical examiner's office. This information revealed a discrepancy between Skylar's original story and what the police had discovered. Specifically, the medical examiner had found that the baby's bones showed signs of being burned, based on an analysis of the remains. Skylar was confused by the news of the baby being burned. She claimed that she did not set the fire and denied harming her child. However, the police still wanted Skylar to admit that she had killed her daughter and then burned the body to hide the evidence. During the investigation, the police suggested that Skylar may have wanted to cremate the baby so that the ashes would not be scattered. However, this suggestion only made Skylar more confused, and she still insisted that she did not burn the baby. Skylar suddenly changed her story to the police, saying that she had a lighter and may have used it to try to burn the baby's remains. She also suggested that the baby may have been born alive and had been crying, even making gurgling or small noises at one point. Additionally, Skylar admitted that she had held the newborn too tightly, which may have led to the baby's death. During an hour-long interrogation, the police gathered enough evidence to arrest Skylar on a charge of reckless homicide. Law enforcement suspected that Skylar had caused the child's death by suffocation. After presenting her case to a grand jury, she was charged with aggravated murder, a crime that carries a life sentence in Ohio. Skylar pleaded not guilty to other charges, including involuntary manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, and child abuse. She spent several days in jail until her family was able to post $50,000 bail to secure her temporary release. Following her child's death, Skylar became the focus of media attention and was subjected to intense public scrutiny. This severely affected her family's daily life. They felt unsafe and were forced to retreat into their home to seek peace and quiet. The threats had disastrous consequences, making it even harder for them to step outside. People who saw them often took pictures, which added to their stress and put enormous pressure on them. The constant public scrutiny became unbearable and affected almost every aspect of their daily lives. Although Skylar's lawyer believes that she made a false confession and that her newborn baby's death was not intentional, the prosecution has not changed its position. Despite new evidence that contradicts their initial assessment, they continue to pursue the case. A key piece of evidence that the prosecution initially presented was the results of a medical expert's examination, which stated that the child's remains had been burned. However, after a thorough examination and additional information, the expert retracted his initial assessment. Following a detailed physical examination of the child, the expert concluded that there was no evidence of burning. The prosecution's approach remained unchanged despite the new information. They continued to focus on Skylar's confession that she had tried to burn the remains, but this contradicted the evidence and raised questions about whether their case was actually convincing. This shows that the state was convicting despite flaws in the evidence. Skylar's lawyers fought hard at trial to defend her against the charges. Thanks to the efforts of her family, Skylar was able to raise the $50,000 bail she needed to be released. However, her bail was conditional on her wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet that would track her whereabouts. Skylar has been largely confined to her home and has had limited public exposure. She feels isolated and prefers to spend most of her time with her family dogs. Over the past 12 months, Skylar's life has undergone major changes as her plans to attend the University of Cincinnati have been put on hold while she awaits trial for her child's murder. The charges were so serious that Skylar's attorney filed a motion to change the venue, but the court denied it. As a result, Skylar was forced to continue attending the trial in the original jurisdiction as planned. The stress and pressure of the trial weighed heavily on her life. Moreover, Skylar had to deal with the psychological and emotional trauma caused by the charges, along with social isolation. Spending time with her dogs brought her comfort and a sense of solace. They became her trusted companions and main support during the time she awaited the trial. At the same time, her family remained by her side, supporting and encouraging her through this difficult period. They expressed their belief in her innocence and hoped that the truth would soon be revealed. Despite the difficult challenges, Skylar persisted in fighting for her freedom. In July 2019, the state made a surprise offer to Skylar's defense attorney. Skylar would plead guilty to the remaining charges and serve a 15-year prison sentence. In exchange, the state would withdraw the felony murder charge. Skylar's parents were uncertain about the decision and debated whether she should accept the deal. After careful consideration, Skylar decided to decline the offer. Her parents were deeply troubled by her decision and wondered if their daughter had made the right choice. However, they understood that it was ultimately Skylar's choice, and they had to respect it. On September 3, 2019, Skylar went to trial for the murder of her newborn daughter. During the trial, the state presented preliminary evidence, including a series of text messages that Skylar had sent to her mother. In these messages, she expressed her happiness after giving birth. She also shared that she was very pleased because her belly had returned to its normal size, stating that she would not allow it to return to how it was before. Notably, this message was sent just Rs after she gave birth. Skylar texted her mother, "I am really speechless because I am so happy. My belly is back." On the second day of the trial, the prosecution presented new information about Skylar. They stated that Skylar sent several text messages to her mother and boyfriend less than a day after she killed her baby. These messages indicated that Skylar seemed very happy about her baby's death. The prosecution argued that these messages were critical evidence suggesting Skylar's involvement in the baby's death. In one message, Skylar wrote to her mother that she was excited because dinner was coming up and she could wear a cute outfit. She mentioned that her belly had just returned to normal and wanted to take advantage of this time to make things great. However, this text message could be interpreted as an attempt to mask her feelings of guilt, while simultaneously being excited about no longer being pregnant. The state argued that Skylar's use of the word excited suggested she was genuinely happy that her baby had died. They also presented evidence of a text message that Skylar sent to her boyfriend in which she stated that although the night before had been the worst, she felt much lighter and happier the next morning. According to the state, this text message implies that Skylar felt unburdened by the death of her baby. The state's position is that Skylar did not want to have the baby. They acknowledged that they could not provide concrete evidence that the baby was born alive. However, they pointed out that Skylar had admitted in her police interview that she heard the baby gurgling and crying. The state alleged that Skylar had searched the internet for information about abortion. It was also alleged that Skylar's mother, Kim, warned her that she would lose everything if she became pregnant. This warning instilled great fear in Skylar, causing her to try to keep her pregnancy a secret. When she could no longer hide her condition, she decided to take Dr. Measures. On the third day of Skylar's trial, the doctor who performed the autopsy on the baby testified. The autopsy revealed that the baby's cause of death was homicide. However, the doctor could not determine when the fractures in the baby's skull occurred, whether they happened before or after the baby died. In forming his opinion regarding the cause of the fractures, the doctor relied on Skylar's statements during the police interview. Skylar's defense attorney challenged the doctor's testimony, arguing that the doctor may have been biased in confirming the information. According to the attorney, the doctor had already formed an opinion and did not want to change it. During questioning, the doctor admitted that she had never examined the remains of the deceased child under a microscope. The defense attorney then asked the doctor if she had consulted with obstetricians. The doctor answered no. The attorney also asked if the doctor had seen photographs of the burial site or the backyard of Skylar's home. Again, the doctor replied no. Another doctor, specializing in fetal medicine, testified during the afternoon session of Skylar's trial, primarily when questioned by the prosecution. He stated that he suspected Skylar's baby was stillborn and added that she had only performed one screening. Knowing that the margin of error for fundal height measurements during the third trimester of pregnancy is 60%, he believed that Skylar could be carrying a healthy baby. He thought this was possible because Skylar had felt the baby move, and a dead baby would not normally move. He also questioned the report from the doctor who had provided information to the defense. The doctor had stated that Skylar's baby would likely have developmental problems. During cross-examination by the defense attorney, he asked the doctor if the prosecution had paid him. The doctor responded that he was paid $5,000 a day because that was the cost the hospital had to pay for another doctor when they were short-staffed. As the prosecution presented their case against Skylar, more shocking and heartbreaking evidence was introduced in court. The evidence that had the strongest impact on Skylar was the images of the deceased child's remains shown on the television screen. These images left a deep and lasting impression on Skylar, as was evident in her reaction during the trial. When the images of her child's remains appeared on the screen, Skylar initially tried not to look at them. Her remarkably calm demeanor at that moment was a stark contrast to the day before, when she had been visibly shaken for a moment before the judge began the jury selection process. When Skylar's defense attorneys presented their case, they argued that her life had been flawed and challenging even before she was charged with murder. They argued that much prosecution evidence presented a partial truth, with some documents was taken out. Skylar's defense attorney argued that her frequent texting was not evidence that she killed her daughter. Instead, the attorney wanted to highlight Skylar's mental health struggles, particularly an eating disorder that she had been battling since she was 12. This was supported by several pieces of evidence, including Skylar seeing a psychologist and nutritionist regularly for treatment of her eating disorder. To support their case, they presented the jury with photos of Skylar's changing appearance and weight over time. The photos included images of her looking very thin, as well as photos showing her looking slightly heavier. Her attorney stated that Skylar held the baby for hours while she bled on the bathroom floor. Despite her critical condition, Skylar remained committed to providing comfort and care for her baby after suffering unimaginable pain. Skylar's attorneys said she decided to bury the baby in her backyard. They explained to the court that Skylar had originally planned to tell her family about her impending pregnancy, but unfortunately did not have time to do so. Skylar's doctor informed her that she was due in 8 to 10 weeks. Therefore, Skylar thought she had enough time to attend prom and graduate from high school before talking to her mother. During the defense, an obstetrician testified that the baby had died before birth. The doctor argued that since Skylar did not admit to cutting the umbilical cord, it was possible that it had been severed before or during the baby's birth. The doctor also argued that Skylar's description of the baby's appearance was significant because she stated that the baby was white, suggesting that the baby may have died before birth. The obstetrician contended that a healthy newborn baby is not always pink. In fact, in his experience, newborns often have a purplish skin tone. Additionally, the doctor noted that Skylar had only gained 15 pounds during her pregnancy. He suggested that this limited weight gain could be a sign of an eating disorder, which might have restricted the baby's growth in the womb. The doctor's testimony aimed to question the accuracy of what Skylar told the police about the baby's health. Skylar's defense argued that she had only told the police what she wanted to say during questioning. They also claimed that she had not witnessed or participated in any harm to the child. Their goal was to cast doubt on the credibility of Skylar's testimony and suggest that other factors may have contributed to the child's death. Skylar Richardson's trial lasted a week, and the jury then reached its final verdict. The verdict came quickly, after just 4 hours of deliberation. They acquitted Skylar of aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and child endangerment. However, Skylar was convicted of abuse of a corpse, a serious crime punishable by up to a year in prison. Skylar was held in custody until sentencing. During her sentencing hearing, she apologized for her actions and acknowledged the seriousness of the incident. The judge criticized Skylar or her role in the tragic death of her child. The judge was certain that if Skylar had made better decisions during her pregnancy, her child would still be alive. He severely criticized her actions and expressed disappointment that her choices led to serious consequences, including the death of her child. The judge also emphasized that Skylar's decisions were directly responsible for the child's death. The 3-year probation sentence for corpse abuse that the judge imposed on Skylar also served as a warning that her actions were morally unacceptable and against the law. In November 2020, another judge agreed to reduce Skylar's probation to 2 years early at the request of her attorney. During the hearing, Skylar expressed her desire to return to a normal life and asserted that she no longer needed supervision. Recognizing Skylar's progress, the judge decided not to allocate any more probation resources to her case. The judge made it clear that probation is not meant to be a punishment or a form of rehabilitation, but rather to give an individual the opportunity to prove why they should not face prison time. Since her acquittal, Skylar has made the most of this opportunity. She has successfully completed 2 semesters of college and works part-time at the law firm that represented her. Despite her acquittal, Skylar has faced many difficulties in finding a part-time job. She has often been denied job opportunities due to her criminal history. However, that has not stopped her from pursuing her career goals. She has expressed a desire to attend law school and become a defense attorney, hoping to use her knowledge to help others overcome similar hardships. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sarah Papenheim. Sarah Papenheim was born on January 30th, 1997, in Minnesota. She was the second child of Donnie Odegaard and Jerry Papenheim, with an older brother named Josh. The siblings developed a strong bond as they grew older. When Sarah was in 2nd grade, her family relocated from Minneapolis to Redding, California. She graduated from Foothill High School in 2015, where she was an active member of the school band and played the drums. Sarah was passionate about music, especially drumming. She was a skilled drummer and regularly played at jam sessions in Redding. As one of the few female drummers, she stood out on stage. When Sarah was 18, she moved back to her hometown in Minnesota with her mother and brother after her parents got divorced. There, she continued to play drums at different venues and eventually met Bernard Allison, a famous blues guitarist and singer. Allison was impressed with her skills and invited her to join him on stage occasionally. By the time Sarah turned 19, she had become a local celebrity among blues fans, known for her bright smile, which earned her the nickname Ronald McDonald. Meanwhile, her brother Josh was struggling with depression and mental health issues after their parents' divorce. Tragically, on an ordinary day in February 2016, the police arrived at their doorstep and delivered devastating news to Sarah's mother. Josh took his own life at the age of 20, leaving his loved ones, especially his mother Sarah, heartbroken. The bond between Sarah and Josh was incredibly strong, and his passing devastated her. To cope with her loss and to help others who struggle with mental health, Sarah decided to study psychology. She had been in touch with Nico Carson Major, who lived in the Netherlands, and she moved there to pursue her studies. At Erasmus University in Rotterdam, Sarah began her psychology program with Nico's support, who not only helped her navigate her grief but also assisted her with her studies as a native speaker. Sarah's passion for music never faded despite her focus on studies and work. She stayed in touch with Bernard Allison, a musician she had performed with, and shared her dream of buying a drum kit. In January 2017, Bernard's band toured Europe, and on Sarah's 20th birthday, January 30th, she attended Bernard's concert in Germany with Nico. Bernard spotted her in the audience, invited her on stage, and let her play the drums with them, just like old times. Sarah lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment complex near the university in Rotterdam. As 2018 drew to a close, she planned to spend Christmas in the United States and booked a flight for a week before New Year's Eve. However, on December 12th, her life took a devastating turn. When a police officer appeared at her doorstep, just like in 2016 when her son had passed away, Sarah's legs began to shake. She instinctively knew what the officer was about to tell her, but couldn't bear the thought of losing another loved one. When the officer informed Sarah's mother that her daughter had passed away, she was overcome with grief and lost consciousness. This devastating news came just a year after the loss of her son, who had died at the age of 20. Sarah was only 21 years old. Sarah lived in a student complex on the 3rd floor, where she rented an apartment with her roommate, Joel Schelling. Joel was also a musician, and music was the common interest that brought them together. Unlike Sarah, who was outgoing and always smiling, Joel was more reserved and had a temper. Despite their occasional quarrels, Sarah remained a supportive friend to Joel, often calming him down when he became angry. However, the situation took a turn for the worse over time. Just 6 days before her death, Sarah confided in her friend Adam Pryor that she was afraid of Joel, who had threatened to harm 3 people he disliked. Sarah knew she had to go to the police. Just a couple of days before her death, she had spoken to her mother on the phone about her concerns. Sarah's roommate, Joel, was behaving in a way that was increasingly bothering her. Her mother advised her to find a new place to live as soon as possible and to avoid Joel until she could move out. On December 12, 2018, at 12:20 p.m., the police received a call from Sarah and Joel's next-door neighbors, who reported hearing a loud fight and then Sarah screaming. When the police arrived, they found Sarah lying on the floor with multiple stab wounds. Despite attempts to revive her, Sarah died from her injuries. The police immediately began searching for Joel, who was nowhere to be found. Neighbors reported that he had left the apartment in a hurry, taking a large double bass with him. This distinctive instrument became a key detail in the police's description of Joel. Less than 2 hours after the crime, 23-year-old Joel Schelling was arrested at Eindhoven train station, about 60 miles from Rotterdam. He was on his way to visit his parents, who lived in Eindhoven. After Joel was arrested, he made a shocking confession to his mother while on the train. He told her that he had taken Sarah's life. The judge subsequently placed Joel under arrest for 14 days to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Meanwhile, forensic experts conducting the autopsy on Sarah's body found 27 stab wounds, with several of them on her neck, abdomen, and back. 2 days after Sarah passed away, her mother, Doni Odegaard, traveled to the Netherlands to arrange for her daughter's body to be returned home. However, this required raising $40,000, a task that was made possible by the generosity of strangers who cared for the family. Upon learning of Joel's arrest, Doni Odegaard inquired if her daughter had contacted the police. Sarah had instead reached out to social workers, who visited Joel and found him calm. However, the next day, Sarah again contacted social services due to Joel's erratic behavior, including hitting himself with a hammer and threatening to harm multiple people. The case against Schelling began in March 2019. Schelling was accused of causing Sarah Papenheim's death and admitted his guilt. However, he claimed he did not remember the actual act of taking her life. According to Schelling, he recalled fighting with Sarah, but his next memory was of being in the shower, cleaning himself. Sarah's mother, Doni Odegaard, attended each hearing, relying on an interpreter to understand the proceedings. During the trial, Schelling stated that he suffered from delirium and heard voices in his head. However, when asked if these voices had instructed him to fight with Sarah, Schelling said he did not know and could not recall. He also could not remember the cause of their fight. Prior to the verdict, experts testified that Schelling suffered from multiple disorders and required long-term treatment. Despite this, they concluded that Schelling was responsible for Sarah's death. The verdict was announced in December 2019. Sarah Papenheim's death occurred before she could receive a response to her second request for support, after her initial request for assistance from social workers went unresponded due to the specialist's unavailability. The medics concluded that Schelling was aware of the initial fight and scuffle with Sarah and had the opportunity to either stop the altercation or grab the knife. By choosing the latter, he should be held accountable for his actions. The prosecutor requested a 10-year prison sentence, but the judge in Rotterdam gave Schelling a 6-year prison term, followed by an indefinite sentence in a psychiatric hospital. The court reduced the sentence from 10 years due to Schelling's relatively young age and his significantly diminished mental capacity at the time of the crime. This means that the court did not consider Schelling fully responsible for his actions. When handing down the sentence, the court released a detailed explanation stating that, although the crime was severe and unpredictable, Schelling's serious psychological disorders made it likely that he would commit another violent crime. The court noted that Schelling suffers from chronic psychological disorders that require ongoing treatment in a clinical setting. The court viewed psychiatric detention as a punitive measure for Schelling, who has expressed a willingness to undergo treatment for depression and other disorders. The court has ruled that Schelling will remain in treatment until it determines he is well enough to be released. The court will review his status every 2 years. Additionally, Schelling has been ordered to pay €68,700 in compensation to Sarah's family. Doni Odegaard is outraged by the sentence, believing it is too lenient. She thinks Schelling should have received a minimum sentence of 10 years in prison. In her opinion, Schelling would have faced a much harsher sentence in the US, such as life imprisonment or the death penalty, which would have prevented him from committing a similar crime in the future. She is also concerned that Schelling may be eligible for parole in as little as 4 years and vowed to do everything in her power to keep him behind bars. An investigation was also conducted into the social workers who had interacted with Sarah. The investigation concluded that the social workers could not be held accountable for failing to identify Schelling's disorders because they did not possess the necessary expertise to make such a diagnosis. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Lori Slesinski. Lori Slesinski, a 24-year-old former Auburn University student, disappeared mysteriously on June 10, 2006, from Auburn, Alabama. Her disappearance occurred after she had confirmed plans to attend a girls' night out at her best friend and co-worker's house home. However, she never arrived. Located in eastern Alabama, Auburn is a rapidly growing city with a rich cultural mix and a strong sense of Southern hospitality. It is home to Auburn University, one of the nation's most recognized public universities. Lori was born to parents Casey and Arlene Slesinski on September 21, 1981. She had blue eyes and blonde hair, and her parents and older brother, Paul, adored her. The investigation into Lori's disappearance began with a disturbing discovery. Her dog was left unattended, the air conditioner was still on, and the telephone cord was missing from her home. The police were baffled by the lack of evidence, and Lori's family was left with unanswered questions. Had Lori left town in a hurry, or was something more sinister at play? After 16 years, the mystery of Lori's disappearance was finally solved, but the events surrounding her vanishing remain as puzzling as ever. The family originally came from New York State but later relocated to rural Alabama farm country near Auburn when Lori was 13. Growing up in a country setting with animals, Lori developed a passion for animals. According to her friends, Lori was stunning and enjoyed spending time with friends, watching movies, riding her bicycle, and playing video games. In addition to these leisure activities, she was diligent in her studies and received support from her family. After completing high school, Lori attended Auburn University, majoring in psychology with a minor in criminology. Her parents purchased a mobile home for her in a well-maintained house park popular with students, where she lived off campus with her cherished Yorkshire Terrier, Peanut. Lori maintained a close relationship with her family, and her mother would call her daily to check in. In 2005, Lori graduated with honors from Auburn University. Following graduation, she secured a job at the East Alabama Mental Health Center while still residing in the house park. She also made plans to pursue her master's degree in psychology in the near future. Lori's family was proud of her accomplishments, but they had no idea that something terrible was about to happen. On June 10, 2006, 24-year-old Lori planned a girls' night at her best friend Lindsay Braun's house. They intended to have a few drinks and watch a movie. Lori and Lindsay had met in their junior year at Auburn University and quickly became friends due to Lori's kind, charming, and outgoing personality. After graduating, they both worked at the same mental health facility, which strengthened their bond. At around 6:30 p.m. on June 10th, Lori called Lindsay to say she needed to stop at the store before heading over for their movie night. Unfortunately, Lori never arrived. Lindsay became worried when she didn't hear from Lori again that night or the next day. She called Lori multiple times and left messages on her home answering machine, but Lori never responded. When Lori didn't show up to work on Monday, June 12th, Lindsay's concerns escalated. It was highly unusual for Lori to miss work without informing anyone. After Lori failed to show up to work on Tuesday, June 13th, Lindsay and another colleague visited Lori's home to check on her. When they arrived at the house, Lindsay found the door unlocked and the air conditioning on, which was unusual. Although Lori was nowhere to be found, her dog, Peanut, was in his crate, looking well-fed and content, as if someone had been caring for him. Surprisingly, his crate was clean, despite Lori having been missing for several days. Lindsay felt a sense of unease as she realized it was unusual for Lori to leave her beloved pet alone and unattended. She recalled that Lori had placed 3 rugs on her kitchen floor because the dog refused to walk on the tile. However, when Lindsay entered Lori's home later that day, the rugs were missing, along with the outside trash can. On the same day, June 13, 2006, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a call from Lori's workplace, informing her that Lori had missed work for 2 consecutive days. Arlene immediately tried to contact Lori but was unable to reach her. Growing concerned for her daughter's well-being, Arlene left for Auburn after alerting her husband, Casey, about Lori's disappearance. Upon arriving at Lori's house, Arlene encountered a disturbing scene. The door was slightly ajar, and Lori's bed was perfectly made, but there was no sign of Lori. Her car was also missing. A closer inspection revealed that several items were gone, including the kitchen rugs, a pillow from the couch, a Galileo thermometer, a green trash can that usually held a rake and shovel, and the phone cord for the landline. Arlene's alarm grew as she realized that something was horribly wrong. She officially reported her daughter missing, holding on to the hope that Lori would eventually show up. As the initial investigation into Lori's disappearance began, police searched her house home but found no significant evidence linking to a suspect. However, they did notice signs of a struggle, scuff marks on the wall, and semen on her bedsheet. Additionally, traces of blood were discovered on the doorknob, and a coat hanger and a single golden hoop earring were also found at the scene. On June 10, 2006, police recovered surveillance footage showing Lori stopping at a Walmart in Alabama. This was the last known sighting of her, and no one had any idea what happened to her after that. Later that afternoon, Lori's mother, Arlene, received a phone call from one of Lori's friends, 25 years old Daryl Rick Ennis. Ennis claimed that he had met Lori on the day she went missing and thought she might have gone to make a drug deal. However, Arlene was skeptical of his story, despite knowing Ennis from when Lori invited him to spend Christmas with their family in 2005. Arlene couldn't believe that Lori would be involved in drug dealing and thought Ennis was lying, but she didn't know why he would make up such a story. Police received crucial information from Ennis himself. However, before they could investigate further, Lori's car was found engulfed in flames on a dead-end street near a bowling alley where Ennis used to work. This discovery, made on June 14, 2006, for days after Lori's disappearance, shifted the investigation from a missing persons case to a potential homicide. Unfortunately, the fire destroyed any potential evidence inside the car. Investigators found a hand-rolled cigarette near the vehicle and a gas can in the nearby woods, but Lori was not inside the car. Lori's family was devastated by the discovery, and they feared the worst. The only lead was the information Ennis had provided to Arlene. When questioned, Ennis repeated his story, adding more details. He claimed he and Lori grew marijuana together and speculated that she might have gone to sell her share. Ennis also suggested that Lori may have been involved with shady individuals. Police searched Lori's house thoroughly but found no evidence of her dealing drugs. During the investigation, they noticed scratches on Ennis's hands and arms, which he attributed to his dog. However, when they spoke to Lindsay, they uncovered more suspicious information. Lindsay reported that during her last phone conversation with Lori on the day she disappeared, she heard Rick Ennis speaking in the background. At the time, Lindsay didn't think much of it, as she knew Ennis was a friend of Lori's. Lindsay stated that when she asked Ennis about Lori's whereabouts via text, he replied that Lori was fine when he last saw her. Additionally, Lindsay told investigators that before Lori went missing, Lori mentioned that Ennis had written her a love letter, but Lori did not feel the same way. Lori had planned to talk to Ennis about her lack of romantic interest in him. Later, it was discovered that Ennis had told his friends about the love letter and Lori's rejection. When confronted with this new information, Ennis admitted to meeting Lori hours before her disappearance but claimed she was fine getting ready to go shopping when he left her house. However, investigators found inconsistencies in Ennis's statement, which raised suspicions. As a result, Rick Ennis became the prime suspect. The investigation led to a search of his car, where a knife, cleaning supplies, and handcuffs were found. Investigators kept collecting evidence by looking into Ennis's past, but they were about to encounter some unexpected surprises. Looking into Rick Ennis's dark past, investigators found that at the age of 12, he had murdered his mother and stepfather. The incident occurred on March 3, 1993, in North Montgomery, Alabama, where the family resided in a house. Ennis's mother, known for her kind and church-going nature, was first shot in the face and then beaten to death with a baseball bat. His stepfather, Eddie Joe Flowers, nicknamed Elvis due to his resemblance to the musician, met a similar fate. Upon returning home from work, Eddie was shot in the face with a shotgun by Rick. Following the murders, Ennis took the family car and crashed it into a fence along the highway. Alabama State Trooper John Clark encountered Ennis walking along the highway and inquired about his parents' whereabouts. Ennis confessed to killing them. A search of his backpack revealed a kitchen knife and ammunition for a 12-gauge shotgun and a .22 caliber. When questioned about his motives, the 12-year-old Ennis showed no emotion and explained that he was upset about his parents' plan to move, which would require him to change schools. Investigators believe Ennis lived with the bodies for 2 days, during which time he continued to attend school. He also confessed to planning to kill his 3 stepsisters, which shocked investigators. However, because of his age, he was tried as a minor and sentenced to 9 years in jail for the double murder. After his release, he moved to Auburn, where he met Lori Slesinski. Following Lori's disappearance, Ennis was the primary suspect, but without direct evidence for Lori's body, he couldn't be charged. Ennis left Auburn shortly after speaking with detectives and eventually settled in Huntsville, Alabama, in 2007. By then, Lori's case had gone cold. In Huntsville, Ennis moved in with Abram Sissons, telling him that he had kitchen rugs given to him by a woman from Auburn who had vanished, but didn't mention her name. Abram didn't suspect anything out of the ordinary about his conversations with Ennis until he discovered Ennis's dark past. At that point, Abram asked Ennis to leave right away. Later, Abram reported that his apartment was completely trashed when he returned. However, police were able to recover the rugs, and one of them tested positive for Ennis's blood. Abram also mentioned that he had seen a Galileo thermometer in Ennis's room before Ennis moved in with him, the same type that was missing from Lori's home. Unfortunately, even with this new information, the police were still unable to connect Ennis to Lori's murder at that time. As their main suspect remained at large, the case went unsolved, leaving Lori's distraught family waiting for answers. Years went by with no updates on the case. Then, in 2016, Mark Whitaker, a special agent with the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation, launched a cold case unit and reopened Lori's case. Alongside his team, including his longtime partner agent J.W. Barnes, Lori's case was their top priority, and they began re-examining the evidence. They started sending evidence to forensic labs for testing and conducted multiple interviews. After re-examining the evidence, Ennis became the main suspect. Agent Mark suspected Ennis due to his past, but needed more evidence to prove his guilt. In a surprising turn of events, Agent Barnes discovered a crucial piece of evidence while reviewing old files. He found an unopened report from 2006 containing test results from Lori's house. The results revealed Rick Ennis's DNA on Lori's bed sheet and the front door. With all the evidence compiled, investigators built a strong case against Ennis, leading to an indictment in 2018. At that time, Ennis was living in Pilot, Virginia, engaged to Elena Atkinson, and working for a company that built portable living structures called yurts. On August 6, 2018, Rick Ennis was arrested by U.S. Marshals on his 38th birthday, 12 years after Lori Slesinski's disappearance from Auburn. The arrest brought relief to Lori's family but shocked Ennis's fiancée and co-workers. Initially charged with 2 counts of capital murder. The trial started on April 1, 2022. The prosecution presented evidence linking Ennis to the crime, including a cigarette but with his DNA found in Lori's bed sheet. However, the defense suggested that the police might have taken the cigarette from Ennis's home and planted it at the crime scene to frame him. The defense also attempted to discredit Lori Slesinski by implying she was involved in drug dealing, which could explain how Ennis's DNA ended up on the bed sheet. Ennis claimed he had consensual sex with Lori before she disappeared, suggesting they were intimate despite Lori previously rejecting his advances. Nevertheless, his account lacked credibility, especially after 2 additional witnesses came forward with crucial information. One of his former co-workers in Alabama, Jeremy Brooks, stated that Ennis called him on June 9, 2006, the day before Lori's disappearance. Ennis asked Jeremy to bring him gas and let him keep the gas tank, but Jeremy refused. According to Jeremy, Ennis claimed he had run out of gas and needed help getting some. Later, after Lori's burned car was found, a gas can matching the description of one missing from Ennis's workplace, a bowling alley, was discovered. Another former co-worker, Terry Booth from South Carolina, shared a disturbing experience she had with Ennis years earlier. When asked why he moved from Auburn, Ennis told her he had to dispose of a body. Although Ennis's comment was initially thought to be a joke, his arrest for Lori's murder proved it was not. Despite denying the allegations and maintaining his innocence, Ennis was found guilty after a 2-day jury deliberation. He faced the death penalty, but prosecutors agreed to drop the death penalty after consulting with Lori's mother, Arlene. Arlene later stated that she agreed to a life sentence without parole for Rick Ennis to avoid years of potential appeals and ensure Ennis would never be released. Ennis was sentenced to life without parole on April 14, 2022, and is currently incarcerated at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Alabama. The outcome was bittersweet for Arlene Slesinski. Tearfully, she acknowledged that it meant she had to accept that Lori would never return home, a hope her heart had held on to. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Kenneth Keith. Michael Hawkinsmith, 35, was born in Danville, Kentucky. He was a well-known pastor at a local church where he lived. After working at the church for a long time, he decided to work at a local pawn shop called ABC while continuing to work as a part-time pastor. After a while, due to the previous owner's health issues, Michael had to take over the entire pawn shop. Being an honest and helpful person, he easily connected with people. In his personal life, Michael was married to Angela, and the two had 2 children together, Andrew and Naomi. Michael and Angela jointly owned the ABC Gold, Games and More pawn shop in Danville, Kentucky. They homeschooled their 9-year-old son Andrew and took care of their newborn daughter Naomi. Andrew often visited his parents' workplace and considered it his playground. However, on the morning of September 20th, 2013, the Hockensmiths went to the ABC store. The morning went as planned. Dan Smith, a regular at the pawn shop, made a scheduled visit. Smith, known as the Gold Man, was known for buying and selling gold between pawn shops across the state. About 15 minutes after opening, as Michael and Smith were making their transactions, a bearded man entered the store and ordered everyone to get on the ground, followed by horrific events. Andrew, who was at the ABC store at the time, after being instructed by his mother, Angela, to hide, noticed the tense situation and quickly called the police to report the situation. 6 minutes after the alarm call, the police arrived at the scene of the murder. When they entered the building, they found a large trail of blood that led them to Michael Hockensmith. They then found his wife, Angela, 38, and another victim, Dan Smith, 60, a broker, on the other side of the counter. All 3 victims had suffered serious injuries from gunshot wounds to the head and torso. Police later found Andrew, 9, and Naomi, 14 months, hiding in a closet. Andrew and Naomi had been through unimaginable horror and were orphaned, having lost both their parents. When examining the crime scene, police found 14 spent shell casings and 3 intact bullets, along with a briefcase belonging to Dan Smith. Remarkably, the victim's personal belongings and all the cash in the cash register were untouched, suggesting that robbery was not the motive. The case was complicated by the lack of surveillance cameras at the pawn shop. Therefore, police had to search for potential witnesses. An employee of Rainbow Cleaners, a nearby dry cleaner, provided vital information when he described a vehicle that had been parked near the building that morning. The vehicle was a silver pickup truck driven by a large man with a bushy beard. While one team of investigators searched the area, another team had to notify the victims' closest relatives of the tragedy. Michael's parents were devastated by the news. However, they also felt blessed to know that their grandchildren, Andrew and Naomi, had survived. The tragic news reached the daughter of the 3rd victim, Dan Smith. Dan Smith was involved in the purchase of precious metals and was well versed in the specifics of his job, which made it easy for him to find common ground with different people. His business involved handling large amounts of cash, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. This led police to suspect that Dan Smith may have been the criminal's primary target. Through surveillance, police discovered that before going to the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop, Dan Smith had gone to the Lawson Jewelry Store in Harrodsburg, 10 miles northeast of Danville. Inside the jewelry store, investigators found a surveillance camera mounted on the far wall that was monitoring every customer who entered and exited the store. Their goal was to determine if anyone was following Dan Smith. At 8:16 a.m., Dan Smith entered the store, and there were no other customers in the building at the time. Dan Smith was carrying a briefcase identical to the one later found at the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop. After greeting the woman behind the counter with a smile, he walked toward the back of the store. Moments later, Dan Smith reappeared in the footage, exiting the back of the store, chatting briefly with an elderly woman who had just entered, and then leaving immediately. Footage from the exterior camera did not show anything suspicious. The police could do nothing but monitor the man, unaware that he would soon be at the center of a tragic event. Meanwhile, Andrew Hockensmith was brought to the police station to testify. Andrew told the story of how he was at the pawn shop with his parents when Dan Smith came in with a bag full of money. While Michael and Dan were talking, a stranger walked in and demanded the bag of money immediately. According to Andrew, Dan Smith immediately gave the stranger his bag of money. Andrew said that his father asked the man to stop, but the man also shot his father with a handgun similar to the one Andrew often played with. After that, his mother instructed him to take his younger sister, Naomi, to the back of the store and hide in the closet. Andrew picked up his sister and hid. At that moment, the criminal pointed the gun at Angela. The 9-year-old boy thought the reason the stranger did this might be because of the money. The boy described the stranger as a very tall man with a fake-looking blonde beard, which matched the description given by a witness from Rainbow Cleaners. In investigating the case, police thoroughly investigated the business run by the Hockensmith family. They discovered that the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop had a different owner, Steve Devine. Although he usually attended Friday transactions with Dan Smith, he was absent on the morning of September 20th. This information raised concerns, making determining his whereabouts a top priority. Steve Devine explained that he had an allergic reaction that morning and had to cancel all his appointments. His wife confirmed this story. The alibi and the fact that Steve Devine did not own a silver pickup truck helped eliminate him as a suspect. Steve Devine also explained why there were no surveillance cameras in the pawn shop. According to him, the security system had been removed by the previous owner, Kenneth Keith. The new owner had yet to install a replacement. Kenneth Keith, 48, is a pastor like Michael Hockensmith. He sold the pawn shop after being diagnosed with brain cancer. However, he is still the owner of another similar establishment, Gold Rush Buyers, in Pulaski County, near Danville's Bowles district. Their friendship began when Michael worked at a church youth camp and lasted 15 years. The Hockensmiths respected Pastor Kenneth, and he was like a beloved uncle to Andrew. With no significant leads, investigators decided to search the street surveillance systems near ABC Gold Games and More and other pawn shops. They found a camera on the office building of the real estate company Danville Rentals. Surveillance footage captured a silver pickup truck at 8:45 a.m., but the image was too blurry to determine the license plate or make. However, eyewitness testimony from Rainbow Cleaners helped police identify the vehicle. The witness described the vehicle as an older model with a distinctive square body shape. The vehicle in the video also clearly showed a square rear bumper that matched this description. The color, type, and shape of the vehicle all suggested that police had found the vehicle of the criminal. They continued to search surveillance systems farther and farther away from the pawn shop. Finally, at 8:17 a.m., cameras at the local Ephraim McDowell Hospital captured the same vehicle. Investigators were able to determine that it was a silver Dodge pickup truck. Dan Smith's family was also devastated by the loss of their loved one. Despite their grief, they attended the funeral and held back their anger. In search of more clues, the Danville police asked the public to come forward with any information about the crime or the vehicle involved. On September 24th, the police received a call from Tracy Hurl, a pastor in Warren, Michigan. He claimed to be a friend of Kenneth Keith and said that in their last conversation, they had discussed the Danville murders. At that point, Kenneth seemed to have changed. Pastor Kenneth Allen informed Tracy that on that particular day, he was driving to Danville to pick up medication for his wife. Kenneth also expressed guilt over what had happened, as he had given Michael Hockensmith the opportunity to become the owner of his former business. It turned out Kenneth's relationship with the Hockensmith family was not what people thought. Tracy recounted that in a conversation with Kenneth said that Michael was a fraud and that Michael had done everything to take over the business from him. These statements aroused suspicion, leading to Kenneth being named a suspect. To verify Kenneth's alibi, investigators decided to review surveillance footage from the Good Neighbor Pharmacy, where Kenneth said he had purchased medication for his wife at 9:24 a.m. according to the surveillance footage. A man entered the pharmacy. It was Kenneth. But just a few minutes earlier, the man was not wearing a green jacket or a beard, which were easily identifiable features of an attacker. However, this did not rule out the possibility that Kenneth was involved in the attack. There was a 6-minute gap between Andrew Hawkinsmith's call to the police and Kenneth's arrival at the pharmacy. The police decided to check whether it was possible to travel from the crime scene to the Good Neighbor pharmacy in such a short time. They found that the trip took about 5 minutes, so Kenneth could have committed the murder, quickly gotten in the car, and gone to the pharmacy to establish a solid alibi. In addition, the main clue was that Kenneth had an unregistered 2008 Dodge pickup truck, silver in color. However, all the evidence found was circumstantial and not enough to make an arrest. So the investigators asked Tracy Hurl to participate in a series of fake phone calls aimed at Kenneth. Fortunately, Tracy agreed. During these calls, Kenneth finally revealed his true feelings towards the Hawkinsmith family. Everyone had been waiting for this to happen. Kenneth began discussing details of the case that had not been made public. Kenneth said that he was in Danville, but he was at the pharmacy. Kenneth confirmed that he was standing in the pharmacy while all this was happening. Kenneth then explained that he had left Danville and returned to Somerset. He then drove to the car wash to prepare for a planned family vacation. At 10:50 a.m., Kenneth was seen on camera walking down the hallway to the cash register with a noticeable smile. Exterior camera footage covering the parking lot showed Pastor Kenneth leaving the car wash in the same silver Dodge at 11:25 a.m., matching all previous images captured by various surveillance systems in Danville. At that point, they had enough evidence to arrest Kenneth. However, when he was offered a lie detector test to clarify his role in the case, he reacted in an unusual way. He claimed that he would not be able to pass a lie detector test because, during his military service, he had performed some special missions that involved killing a number of people. Investigators then executed a search warrant at Kenneth Allen Keith's pawn shop and discovered some important evidence. They found a fake beard and a significant amount of cash without any legal explanation as to how he had obtained it. In particular, they also found bundles of money wrapped in a ribbon with the name of the bank that issued them, indicating that Dan Smith was a customer. Further investigation revealed that the money found in Keith's pawn shop had recently been withdrawn from the account of a deceased broker. This raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in the case. In addition, investigators also found several .22 caliber shell casings in Keith's pawn shop. After ballistic analysis, they discovered that these casings had been fired from the same type of weapon used to shoot Andrew and Naomi's parents. Kenneth Allen Keith was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and robbery. He believed that Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine were conspiring to remove him from the business. However, there was no evidence that Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine were involved in any conspiracy. When Kenneth met Dan Smith at the pawn shop, he tried to create a fake plan to make the police think that the case was a robbery. However, the plan failed when the police investigated and found no evidence of suspicious activities by Michael Hawkinsmith and Steve Dine. On September 20th, Kenneth arrived in Danville in his silver Dodge Caravan. He circled the pawn shop until he saw Dan Smith's car parked nearby. Kenneth then killed Dan Smith, Michael Hawkinsmith, and Angela Hawkinsmith. After taking all the cash, Kenneth calmly left the crime scene and stopped at the Good Neighbor pharmacy, which was captured on surveillance cameras, creating a false alibi. Kenneth's decision to have his car washed appears to have been another attempt to remove any evidence that might have been left on the car. Prior to sentencing, in 2017, Kenneth Allen Keith pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Sarai Sierra. Sarai Sierra was born on November 9, 1979, in New York City to Puerto Rican parents who immigrated to the United States in 1973. Her father, Dennis, and mother, Bethany Jimenez, settled in Manhattan, where they raised their children, including Sarai, her brother, David, and her sister, Christina. Soon after moving, the couple joined the local Protestant community. They raised all of their children strictly, following the religious teachings of their chosen faith. Sarai's family regularly attended church together, socialized with other members of the religious community, and the children attended Sunday school. Growing up, Sarai had a strong, energetic, and creative personality. Unlike her younger sister Christina, who was quiet, obedient, and very modest. Sarai's family had strict rules that all members had to follow. These rules, which were applied to the daily routines of the family members, such as the daughters were not allowed to socialize with boys, and they had to be home by 9 p.m. All their friendships were controlled, and the parents always knew where they were and with whom. Sarai's life revolved around her family, school, and church, and her sphere of contact was limited to those places. For a young, active, sociable girl like Sarai, she felt trapped by the boundaries set by her parents, even though they thought they were doing the best for her. During her school years, Sarai planned to go to a teacher training college and become a teacher in the field of culture or art. However, as she neared graduation, her interests changed and she became fascinated with psychology, considering a career change to a field related to this new passion. At a religious community meeting, a young man named Stephen noticed Sarai, a striking dark-haired beauty. He found an excuse to talk to her. At the time, Sarai was 18 years old, while Stephen was 7 years older than her. Despite the age difference, her parents found Stephen to be a decent, polite, and honest young man, so her parents agreed to let the couple date. Stephen quickly got along with Sarai's parents, Dennis and Bethany. Less than a year after meeting, in February 1999, the couple married. Sarai was 19 and Stephen was 26. It is possible that Sarai did not truly love him, but agreed to marry him for the purpose of moving out of her parents' home and freeing herself from such strict control. After the move, Stephen and Sarai settled in Michigan, where Stephen's parents lived. The change was especially important for Sarai, who had spent most of her life in New York. The new environment seemed to have a positive effect on her. She enjoyed decorating her new home, making new friends, and exploring the area. Sarai found work as a receptionist at a local dental office and was thinking about getting a college degree. Sarai soon became pregnant, giving birth to a boy and then a girl. As a result, her college plans were postponed. A few years later, the Sarai family of 4 decided to move again, this time to California, where they settled in the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles. Here, Stephen was offered a job, but the couple soon realized that the money he earned was not enough to live on. After consulting with each other, they decided to move back to New York. They found a small apartment to rent. At this time, the couple was having financial difficulties. Sarai remained at home to take care of the children, while her husband did many odd jobs to make a living. However, things began to stabilize when the children started going to school. Sarai got a job at an advertising agency. At the same time, Stephen found a stable job as a bus driver on one of the city's routes. Sarai put her studies on hold to raise her children. As her children grew older and her life became more stable at the age of 30, she returned to her long-cherished dream of pursuing an education. She decided to pursue a different field, choosing a degree in psychology at a local university. However, the boring classes began to bore Sarai. She decided to find herself in a different field, choosing a career that would inspire her and allow her to express herself. Since Sarai had always been creative, good at drawing and seeing beauty in everything, her artistic eye eventually led her to photography. To further hone her skills, she joined a prestigious photography community in New York. Her talent was quickly recognized as she demonstrated her ability to choose the perfect angle and create beautiful compositions. Her work was even praised by professionals for its creativity and vision. In early 2012, Sarai's colleagues advised her to create a social media page to showcase her work. She followed their advice and started posting her photos online. The response was overwhelming, with thousands of users subscribing to her profile and enthusiastically commenting on each new post. Within a few months, she became a real star, and her subscriber count continued to grow exponentially. The enthusiasm really overwhelmed Sarai. She felt that she could achieve much more and wanted to develop and improve in this direction. So she proposed to organize a group photography trip to look for beautiful and unusual locations in different parts of the world. She started by organizing short trips within the country, focusing on capturing iconic architectural landmarks and historical monuments through her lens. When her photos received significant attention and praise, she was motivated to continue. Next, Sarai wanted to travel to Istanbul, one of the most ancient and beautiful cities in the world, to document the city's historical sites. Sarai's decision to take a photography trip to the other side of the world surprised her family, especially her parents. Since she had never traveled abroad or been away from home for a long time, they were not very happy with the idea. However, Sarai was determined to carry out her plan and even arranged for her best friend, Magdalena, to come along. Her parents did not know that Sarai's family was going through a difficult time, as her relationship with her husband began to fall apart. It is possible that this difficult situation prompted Sarai's desire to take the trip. She wanted to change her surroundings and think about her family's difficulties. Sarai had lived in a strict framework for too long, and now she was eager to do what she wanted to do. At the same time, her husband Stephen's social media profile began posting cryptic statuses, reflecting on the value of marriage, love, and mutual respect in relationships. And there was a post where Stephen darkly hinted at Sarai's infidelity. But a few hours later, Stephen deleted the post, leaving unanswered questions behind. It was clear that he felt unhappy and unloved, and he tried to show it to everyone through his social media page. Sarai was also going through the same pain, but she kept it to herself, trying not to complain and focusing on her work. Sarai's long-awaited trip was coming up. But she received some disappointing news just before her departure. Her best friend Magdalena, who was supposed to accompany her, had to cancel the trip due to unforeseen work issues. Although Sarai was extremely upset, she had been looking forward to the trip for so long that she decided not to change her plans. Her family was worried about her traveling alone to a foreign country, but Sarai reassured them that everything would be fine. She promised to keep them updated by calling, writing, and sending photos every day. In addition, Sarai was also planning to visit Germany and Austria, where she had scheduled several commercial photography assignments. Her entire trip was literally scheduled by the hour, and she would not deviate from the plan. On January 7, 2013, Sarai traveled from New York to Istanbul. She had some cash with her, and she had carefully packed her belongings, which included a smartphone, a tablet, and a cheap DSLR camera with a professional lens. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she reported to her family that she had landed safely and was on her way to her pre-booked hotel, which was located in a less popular part of the city. Due to budget constraints, the hotel was located in a remote neighborhood that locals considered unsafe. After dropping off her luggage and changing into her travel clothes, she headed to the nearest metro station, eager to explore the historic city center. Sarai spent her days in Istanbul sightseeing and capturing the beauty of the city through photography. Every evening, she would video call her parents and husband, sharing stories about her experiences and plans for the next day. She also spent time processing the photos and sharing them on social media. Unknown to her family, Sarai met a young man named Tylan on social media in 2012. Over the course of several months, they corresponded and became very close. It was Tylan who convinced her to fly to Istanbul. As a native of Istanbul, Tylan was the ideal guide, showing Sarai around interesting places. Sarai trusted Tylan completely, and they spent many days together exploring the city. After a week in Istanbul, Sarai traveled to several European countries, where she arranged several commercial photo shoots. Here, Sarai saved money on hotel rooms, as she was welcomed by fans who had subscribed to her social media accounts and had been following her work for a long time. Offered to let her stay. And her fan was a young man in Austria who met her at the airport in Vienna. He was a few years older than Sarai and shared her passion for photography, admired her work, and wanted to meet her in person. Sarai's trip went smoothly. She visited all the planned destinations and met everyone she had arranged to meet. On the third day, she arrived in Berlin, where she was greeted at the airport by fans who took her on a tour of the city. After completing her assignment in Germany, Sarai returned to the airport and flew back to Istanbul, planning to stay there for 2 more days before returning home. Upon arriving in Istanbul, she met Tylan and they spent the day exploring the city together. They ended the evening at a popular local bar, and after midnight, Tylan took Sarai back to her hotel, where they said their goodbyes. On January 21, 2013, Sarai was scheduled to return home to New York after her photography trip. Before leaving, she informed her parents and husband of her flight details. Since this was the longest trip she had ever taken away from home, everyone was relieved that the trip was coming to an end. However, before returning, Sarai decided to take a last walk around the city and take some more beautiful photos to show everyone. At the appointed time, Sarai Dennis' father arrived at the airport to pick up his daughter because her husband was at work and could not come. He arrived early to avoid any possible traffic jams. However, after the plane landed and all the passengers had disembarked, Sarai disappeared without a trace. Worse still, her phone was unreachable and all attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. Dennis then waited a while longer, and worried about his daughter's absence, he went to see a representative of the airline. They told him that a passenger by that name was not on the flight, which shocked Dennis. He quickly called Stephen and told him what was happening, emphasizing that she needed to be found immediately. Stephen started contacting the hotel in Istanbul where his wife, Sarai, was staying. The hotel staff informed him that although it was time to check out, her belongings were still in the room and she had not arrived to check out, and she did not appear at the hotel on the second day. This information sent family members into a panic, as they did not know where Sarai was and did not understand what to do next. Stephen accessed his wife's account, looking for clues about her disappearance. He discovered her correspondence with a man named Tylan, which aroused his suspicions. Despite this, Stephen decided to contact Tylan directly to find out more. However, Tylan claimed that he had seen Sarai the day before she left and that she had not even called him before the flight. Despite her promise, Sarai's family quickly notified the U.S. Embassy in Istanbul about her disappearance. The next day, a large-scale search operation was launched in the area. Sarai's husband and parents immediately flew to Istanbul to join the search effort. The police launched an investigation, starting with trying to identify the people Sarai had met before she disappeared. To gather information, they interviewed the staff at the hotel where she was staying, as well as her friend Tylan. According to the hotel manager, he last saw Sarai the evening before she disappeared, when she left the hotel with a small bag and a camera. Although she was scheduled to check out the next day, she never returned to the hotel. In addition, the receptionist provided a description of the clothes Sarai was wearing on the day she disappeared. The situation with Tylan is much more interesting and ambiguous. First, the guy's name is actually Taran, and it is still unclear why he introduced himself to Sarai with a fake name. And it is worth considering that they had been in regular contact for several months before meeting, and Sarai had come to Istanbul at his invitation. All of this suggests that there was a romantic relationship, but Taryn himself categorically denied it, claiming that they were just friends. The next stage of the investigation involved reconstructing Sarai's route in detail. To achieve this, the police examined her mobile phone data and reviewed the footage of street surveillance cameras. They discovered that Sarai took the metro to Sultanahmet district and then to the Cape between the Bosphorus Strait and the Golden Horn Bay, followed by a trip to Eminönü Bazaar. However, she got lost in the crowd of tourists at the bazaar. The police continued to track her route and discovered that she had boarded the metro again, intending to visit the Sarıyer walls. Unfortunately, she disappeared from the camera's view again. Police decided to investigate the area around the Sarıyer wall, questioning locals and searching the area in the hope of finding any witnesses who might have seen a woman holding a camera. After an extensive search, they found the body of a young woman near the ancient Constantinople wall. The body was hidden under a dirty, old blanket, making it less noticeable. Police believe the blanket was used to transport Sierra to the location. There was no clothing on the lower part of the body. An autopsy found that Sarai died from severe head trauma caused by a heavy, blunt object. Her body also showed signs of trauma, including hematoma and 2 broken ribs. There were also several hematomas on her body and several broken ribs. Pathologists also found epithelial granules and blood under Sarai's fingernails, indicating that she had defended herself and scratched at the attacker. An examination found that the attacker had taken her handbag, phone, and camera, but they left behind valuables such as her gold earrings, wedding ring, and expensive watch. A review of local camera footage showed a young woman resembling Sarai filming with her phone. A man then approached her, punched and pushed her, and both disappeared from view of the camera. Unfortunately, the identity of the attacker was not immediately known, leading to mixed reviews. The incident quickly gained international attention after details of the case were leaked to the media. There have been many questions and mixed reviews about Sarai's international travels. And police suspect that Sarai flew to Istanbul to visit an acquaintance, Taylan, whose real name is Taryn, and then planned to meet another man in Austria. However, both men have denied having an intimate relationship with Sarai. The high-profile case was investigated jointly by Turkey's special services and the FBI, but initially, neither agency had any concrete leads to follow. A few weeks after the crime, police tracked down the suspect, Ziya Tasali, who had a criminal record and made a living by picking up scraps of paper on the city streets. However, before they could question him, Ziya borrowed money from relatives and fled the country, likely crossing into Syria through Hatti province. Police obtained a search warrant for his home and collected a DNA sample. They compared the DNA to skin particles and semen found on Sarai's body, confirming their suspicions that Ziya was indeed the perpetrator. Sarai's phone was last active in the neighborhood where he lived. Police initially gave up on arresting Ziya after learning that he had fled to Syria. However, an unexpected development changed everything. The suspect attempted to cross the border into Istanbul again, this time to return home, but was arrested for illegal entry. Before his arrest, he had joined a rebel group in Syria, acquired a gun, and was injured in the conflict. Fearing for his safety, he decided to return to Istanbul with the gun, leading to his arrest. Border police quickly alerted security services upon discovering his true identity. During questioning, Ziya Tasali gave a statement. On a hiking trail to the Sarıyer wall, he noticed a young woman and watched her from a distance, admiring her as she took pictures. As he approached her, the woman, who appeared to be trying to communicate with him through gestures, seemed to try to ask him something, but Ziya did not understand because of the language barrier. However, he noticed that she had a brand new iPhone and an expensive camera, which caught his attention. As she continued walking, he followed her. It was getting dark and there was no one else around, near the location next to the wall. At one point, Zia thought that Sarai was taking pictures of him, which angered him. He picked up a large rock and hit Sarai on the head. The two rolled down the rubble of the wall. After Sarai was knocked unconscious, Zia took advantage of the situation and sexually assaulted her. Zia then delivered another serious blow to the head to finish Sarai off. Zia took Sarai's belongings, including her bag, camera, and phone, and left the scene. As he was leaving, he came across a discarded blanket and decided to return to cover her body. He then dragged the body to a location out of sight of the hiking trail. He then covered the body with a blanket and left. Notably, while the search for Sarai was ongoing, Zia returned to the crime scene again to confirm that the victim, Sarai, was dead and that her body was still in the same position he had left it. When Zia found out on the news that the victim's body had been found, he knew the police would soon be looking for him, so he decided to flee the country. He borrowed money from his sister, who often felt sorry for him. The stolen items turned out to be worthless to Zia. The camera was broken during the fall and the smartphone was locked with a password that he could not crack. Therefore, he threw away the smartphone along with the other stolen items when he fled. Zia did not deny his guilt, and judging by his testimony, he had no remorse for what he had done, nor was he troubled by his conscience. Important evidence presented in court included forensic DNA analysis. This analysis showed that the skin found under Sarai's fingernails belonged to Zia and that his DNA was also found on her body. Additional evidence included data from Sarai's cell phone, which showed that it was last used near Zia's home. Additionally, a surveillance video recording of the attack added to the case file and supported the evidence against Zia. The presentation of all the evidence led to the decision that Zia should undergo a psychiatric evaluation. This decision was based on concerns about his sanity due to his unstable behavior and description of the violent crimes he had committed. The experts ultimately concluded that Zia was sane and fully aware of his actions at the time of the attack. In 2014, Judge Ely made the final decision in the case. Zia Tasali was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison. This decision was accepted by Sarai's family, who felt it was appropriate. After a thorough autopsy, Sarai's body was returned to New York for burial. Her funeral was held according to the family's wishes and in accordance with their religious beliefs. In her memory, Sarai's family created a website featuring her previously unpublished work, including photographs. The photographs attracted international attention, with people from all over the world wanting to buy them. The money raised from the sale of the photographs was set aside by the family for a charitable cause. Her husband, Stephen, began a close relationship with a woman in the Christian community who supported him during this difficult time and regularly helped him with childcare and household chores. Less than 2 weeks before the anniversary of his wife's death, Stephen married his new partner. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Lynn family. The Lynn family's story is a heart-wrenching tale of love, ambition, and tragedy that began in the late 1980s. Min Lin and Yunli Lin, both Chinese nationals, met at an Australian university where they were pursuing higher education. Min had stayed on after completing his degree for a professional internship, while Yun had arrived through an exchange program. Their chance encounter in a university corridor sparked an instant attraction, which they later described as love at first sight. As foreigners in a new land, they shared a deep connection, united by their dreams of building a new life in Australia. After graduating, the couple married and settled down in the peaceful suburb of North Epping in Sydney. Their love flourished, and they built a close-knit family, deeply committed to each other. In August 1994, they welcomed their first child, June Brenda Lynn, who went by her middle name Brenda. 2 more children followed, Henry in 1997 and Terry in 2000. As the family entered the 2000s, Min and Yun decided to start a business venture, opening a small newsstand together. Through hard work and dedication, they turned their humble beginning into a successful news agency with a publishing branch on Rose Street. As their business thrived, they were able to afford a comfortable lifestyle, complete with a spacious home, a luxury car, and exclusive private schooling for their children. Min focused on managing the business, while Yun dedicated herself to taking care of their home and raising their kids. The community highly respected the Lyns for their hard work, kindness, and charitable nature. They were known for being exemplary, caring parents who avoided conflicts. Their children were outstanding in their own ways. Brenda, the eldest, was a stunning beauty and an exceptional student with a passion for helping animals. Henry and Terry, the boys, were energetic and sports enthusiasts, sharing a love for soccer. The siblings were incredibly close, almost inseparable. As the Lynn family's prosperity grew, they began to sponsor relatives from China to visit, live, or even settle in Australia permanently. Min's parents were the first to make the move, settling in North Epping and helping with the kids. Min's father also worked part-time at their newsstand on weekends. Later, Yun's parents also moved to the same Sydney suburb, and Min and Yun bought them a small house. Yun's sister, Irene, joined the Lynn household, helping with chores and childcare. By this time, the Lynn family business had become very successful, earning almost $1 million per year. It had become a popular gathering place where people would come to read, discuss news, and socialize over coffee. In late 2007, Min Lynn's younger sister, Kathy Lynn, and her husband, Lang bin Robert, moved to Sydney seeking better opportunities. They had previously visited relatives in Australia and had briefly lived in Melbourne before returning to China. This time, they were determined to settle in Australia for good. Robert, a former successful ear, nose, and throat doctor in China, decided to try his hand at entrepreneurship. Kathy and Robert invested all their savings into opening their own restaurant in Sydney, but unfortunately it struggled and eventually closed. Their subsequent attempts to open a cafe or snack bar also failed. Robert, who lacked business experience and financial management skills, struggled to succeed in his new ventures. Robert and Kathy moved to North Epping to be closer to their family. Kathy found a job, but Robert was still trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. The Lynn and Z families were close, not just because they were related, but also because they were good friends. They saw each other almost every day, kept in touch constantly, and often had meals together. The last time they all got together was on the evening of July 17, 2009, at Kathy and Min's parents' house. Unfortunately, they didn't know it would be their last time together. The next morning, July 18th, the Lynn family's shop didn't open, which was unusual because it was always open 7 days a week. The shop didn't have any signs or notices on the door saying it would be closed, which worried the regular customers and other shop owners in the area. One of them tried to call Min several times, but couldn't get through, so they called Kathy to ask her what was going on. Kathy was surprised and worried because her brother Min never closed the shop without telling anyone first, and usually had their father or father-in-law cover for him. She tried calling Min and his wife Yun, but they didn't answer. She even tried calling their home phone, but no one picked up. Kathy and her husband Robert visited Min's house, worried about the family's safety. They arrived at 9 a.m. to find the family car in the driveway and the front door unlocked, but no one was responding to their calls. The house was quiet and seemed undisturbed, with no signs of forced entry. As Kathy called out for her brother again, she went upstairs to the second floor. When she opened the bedroom door of Min and Yun Lin, she was shocked and horrified by what she saw. The room was covered in blood. On the floor, walls, ceiling, furniture, and curtains. Yun Lin's lifeless body lay near the bed, so badly mutilated that it was hard to recognize. In the next room, Irene, Yun's sister, lay dead in her bed, her face brutally beaten. In the children's bedrooms, Kathy found the bodies of 12-year-old Henry and 9-year-old Terry, both brutally beaten to death and lying in different corners of the room. Brenda, the 15-year-old daughter, was fortunate to be away on a school trip the previous day and avoided being at home during the tragic events. When Kathy discovered the carnage, she immediately called emergency services, but her frantic state made it difficult for her to provide clear information. She begged for medical help to arrive quickly, hoping to save anyone who might still be alive. Unfortunately, the first responders who arrived at the scene confirmed the deaths of all the victims. The next morning, a disturbing discovery was made after Kathy's emergency call. Robert went to fetch Brenda's grandparents, who lived about 10 kilometers away, while the police and paramedics rushed to the scene. What they found was soon classified as one of the most horrific crime scenes they had ever encountered. The Lynn family was tragically killed, each member suffering multiple blows to the head from a heavy blunt object, similar to a hammer. The murder weapon was not found at the scene. It appeared that the killer struck the father first, followed by the mother, her sister, and finally the two boys. Initially, investigators found no significant clues, and the fact that valuables and money were left untouched suggested that the primary motive was to eliminate the family rather than rob them. Initially, it seemed unlikely that one person could overpower the entire family, and multiple suspects were suspected. However, evidence revealed that the children were awake during the attack and had tried to escape, leaving behind bloodstains and splatters throughout the house. Further investigation showed that the adult victims, in addition to head injuries, also suffered signs of strangulation, possibly to minimize resistance during the assault. The killer left behind identical bloody shoe prints in each room with a unique tread pattern, but the shoe brand and owner could not be identified, only the shoe size. Notably, no foreign fingerprints were found, suggesting that the killer wore gloves. The Lynn family massacre investigation initially yielded no leads or suspects, despite the family having no known enemies. The attack occurred between midnight and 3 a.m. on July 18th. Brenda Lynn, the sole survivor and eldest child, was on a school trip to New Caledonia at the time. She was informed of the tragedy through social media, but initially disbelieved it, hoping it was a mistake. Her aunt Kathy called and confirmed the news, and Brenda was flown back to Sydney, where her new guardians, Kathy and Robert, met her. She moved in with them as the Lynn family home was sealed as a crime scene. The next day, Brenda was questioned by the police, but could provide no new information, insisting her family had no enemies and had noticed nothing unusual before her trip. After her family's death, Brenda inherited the family business and properties. As she was still a minor, her Aunt Kathy and Uncle Robert became her legal guardians, responsible for managing the estate on her behalf. Although her grandparents offered to help, Kathy and Robert wanted to care for her, and the matter was resolved amicably. The family's shop and publishing business reopened under Robert's management. As Brenda was not yet ready to take over, Robert reviewed the family's financial assets, including bank accounts and properties. Experts examined the crime scene, but despite their efforts, found no concrete leads, suggesting the killer likely acted alone and entered the house quietly. The killer wore distinctive size 9.5 shoes with an ornate tread pattern, used a hammer as the weapon, and wore gloves, preventing fingerprint evidence. The lack of foreign DNA and bloodstains on the doorknobs of each bedroom where the crimes occurred indicated the killer's bloody gloves touched them, except for Brenda's room, suggesting the killer was aware of her absence. The tragic incident received widespread media coverage, but despite this, no substantial evidence or suspects emerged. Rumors and theories circulated, including the Lynn family's supposed wealth being the motive, a bungled robbery, or involvement by local Chinese mafia clans. While these theories were not entirely dismissed, they were later deemed unlikely due to a lack of evidence. As the investigation continued, none of the theories were proven, and no suspects came forward. The robbery theory was eventually ruled out when it became clear the killer's sole intention was to eliminate the household members, leaving behind untouched money and valuables. The power outage in the house suggests the killer was familiar with the location of the electrical panel and had likely been in the house before, possibly having obtained a key in advance. After thoroughly reviewing the case details, an investigator re-listened to Kathy's emergency call and finally discovered a significant hint in the recording. A 911 call recorded Kathy's desperate attempts to explain the situation, her words interspersed with cries and sobs. At the end of the call, Kathy surprisingly addressed her husband directly in Cantonese, saying she didn't want to be left alone in the house. This caught the investigators' attention, and they translated her words. This was significant because Robert had chosen to pick up his in-laws himself, leaving Kathy alone at the crime scene before the police arrived. His behavior seemed highly suspicious, as 5 people had just been brutally taken away from the house, and the killer could still have been hiding inside. The police discovered that Robert had a key to his brother-in-law's house, which he had been given just before the tragedy. He never mentioned this during questioning. Kathy was unaware of this fact, but Brenda unintentionally revealed it to the investigators. Further inquiry exposed Robert's false claim of being a successful ear, nose, and throat doctor. He had a medical degree, but never had a steady job in the field. There were rumors that he fled to Australia to escape punishment for alleged bribery charges in China. After settling in North America, Robert became financially dependent on his wife's income and occasional financial help from Kathy's relatives. Once the guardianship papers for Brenda were finalized, Robert behaved as if he had inherited the Lynn family's entire estate. He forced Yun's parents out of the house that Min had bought for them, though it was legally under the deceased name. Considering these facts and circumstances, investigators believed Robert was motivated by jealousy of his wife's wealthy and successful relatives and had long planned to take their property, money, and business. The police couldn't arrest Robert yet because they lacked concrete evidence against him. They obtained permission to install hidden cameras in the Z household, hoping to gather evidence to prove Robert's guilt. The breakthrough came when Kathy mentioned her husband's preference for a specific brand of shoes during an interrogation. Robert had bought 2 pairs of limited edition sneakers years earlier and still had a pair in its box at home. Significantly, Robert wore size 9.5 shoes, the same size as the killer's. Hidden cameras caught Robert destroying the box containing the shoes. This led to a search warrant for Robert's home, where a new pair of size 9.5 sneakers was found. The tread pattern on these shoes matched the prints found at the crime scene. Moreover, a small smear of blood was discovered in his garage. Forensic analysis confirmed that the smear was indeed a blood stain containing the DNA of all 5 Lynn family victims, directly linking it to the crime scene. This evidence led to Robert's arrest, providing the concrete proof the police needed to take action. In May 2011, 2 years after the tragedy, the evidence led to Robert's arrest. Despite his vehement denials of involvement, the police had finally gathered enough evidence to take action. Robert downplayed the importance of the sneakers found in his possession, claiming they were new and that he had gotten rid of the old pair. While awaiting trial in prison, he unknowingly shared cells with several informants and made some incriminating statements. During one conversation, Robert revealed that he had meticulously planned the crime and taken great care to cover his tracks. He admitted to buying the murder weapon at a remote store without surveillance cameras and drugging his wife with sedatives to prevent her from waking up and noticing his absence. Robert also confessed to disposing of the evidence, including the hammer, sneakers, gloves, and clothing, in a way that would ensure they would never be found. At the trial, however, Robert denied all of this, and the only evidence against him was the testimony from his cellmates and some indirect evidence. As a result, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict, and Robert was released on bail in December 2015. The trial resumed in June 2016 with new testimony from another informant who claimed that Robert had confessed to an obsession with Brenda since she was 13 years old. This new information led to a re-examination of Brenda, who tearfully revealed that Robert had coerced her into a sexual relationship when she was just 13. She had remained silent about the abuse for years, fearing retaliation. With this new evidence, Robert was found guilty on all charges. He received 5 life sentences, 1 for each murder, without the possibility of parole. All of his subsequent appeals were denied. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Varani. In 2012, Jasveer Ram Ginde, a 29-year-old banker, lived in Wawal Town, England, while his parents resided in India. They would frequently call him, urging him to get married since he had reached a marriageable age. Jasveer, however, would consistently ignore their requests until he finally relented in 2012. His parents were overjoyed by his decision and immediately started searching for a suitable bride for their son. In October 2012, Jasveer visited India and reunited with his parents after many years. They showed him photographs of several potential brides, but he didn't find any of them appealing. A relative then suggested a girl named Varani, whom they had discovered on a matrimonial website. Jasveer's parents were impressed by her profile and showed it to their son. Jasveer was immediately drawn to her picture, and his parents subsequently contacted Varka's parents to arrange a meeting between the two families. During this meeting, Varka and Jasveer were introduced to each other, and after conversing for a while, they found themselves compatible. Talks of their marriage began, and a wedding date was eventually set. Let's take a step back and learn about Varka's background. Varani, who lived in Marbagh Singh Nagar, Punjab, was 24 years old when Jasveer, 29, came into her life. After graduating, Varka pursued a degree in information technology and had a passion for studying, earning degrees in 4 different courses at a young age. She was the apple of her family's eye. As she approached a suitable age for marriage, her family, with her consent, created a profile for her on a matrimonial site. Through this platform, Varka found her life partner, and Jasveer planned to take her to England after their wedding. Varka's family was overjoyed, knowing that her academic achievements would make it easy for her to find a job in England as well. On March 28, 2013, Jasveer and Varka tied the knot in a traditional Indian wedding, which was a lavish affair with around 700 guests in attendance. However, shortly after the celebration, Jasveer had to return to England, while Varka's visa was still pending approval. During this period, Varka applied for an England visa, but Jasveer had already reached England. Meanwhile, Varka was eagerly waiting for her visa in India. Eventually, her wait ended, and in July, she booked a ticket to join her husband in England. Finally, on August 10, 2013, Varka arrived in England, reuniting with Jasveer. In the vicinity of Jasveer's house, there was a crematorium where the dead were cremated. The pungent smell of burning human flesh would often spread through the air when someone's funeral rites were performed, causing discomfort to Jasveer and those around him for a few hours. Now, it was September 12, 2013, and Varka had been in England for about a month. On that night, smoke began billowing from Jasveer and Varka's house, alarming their neighbors. To investigate the source of the smoke, 2 or 3 neighbors visited Jasveer's house. When they rang the doorbell, Jasveer initially didn't respond. However, when he eventually opened the door, one of the neighbors asked what was causing the smoke and smell of burning flesh in his house so late at night. In reality, no human cremation had taken place at the crematorium that day. In response, Jasveer explained that they had cleaned their house that day, accumulated some garbage, and were just burning it in the furnace, which might have been causing the smell. Hearing this, the neighbors went back to their homes, but after some time, a very strong smell started emanating again from Jasveer's house. Because of this, it became difficult for the neighbors to breathe, so one of them called the police to complain. A few minutes later, the police arrived at Jasvir's house, responding to reports from neighbors about a strange smell emanating from the residence. Jasvir provided the same evasive answers to the police's inquiries as he had to his neighbors. The police then conducted a search of Jasvir's house, discovering a 22-inch furnace in which he was burning household trash. Following their inspection, the police departed, but Jasvir subsequently went to the police station to file a complaint against his wife. In his statement, he alleged that Varka had deceived him, marrying him only to secure a pathway to England from India. According to Jasvir, the two had argued that morning, and in the evening, Varka had taken $500 and left his house. After hearing Jasvir's story, the police assured him that they would find Varka soon. Following up on his complaint, Jasvir returned home and promptly called his parents in India, recounting the entire ordeal. By the next morning, Jasvir's parents had also informed Varka's family about Varka's actions. However, on the morning of September 13th, Jasvir again burned the pot inside his house. Smoke billowed out, accompanied by a peculiar and pungent smell. This time, the neighbors found the situation utterly bizarre, prompting them to call the police once more. When the police arrived at Jasvir's house that morning, they told him that his neighbors were distressed due to his actions. The overpowering smell compelled the police to investigate its source, and they attempted to enter Jasvir's house. Without hesitation, Jasvir guided the police to his garden. The police conducted a thorough search of the entire garden, but yielded nothing. Just as they were about to leave Jasvir's house, a female officer spotted a furnace nearby, still burning with a flickering flame inside. As she removed the lid, she let out a blood-curdling scream, prompting the other officers to converge on the furnace. Inside, the officer had discovered a charred human body, the skin completely incinerated, leaving only skeletal remains. The police wasted no time in arresting Jasvir. A team of forensic experts was subsequently summoned to the scene. The severely burned body made it challenging for even the forensic pathologist to determine its gender. However, a few personal items were recovered from the furnace, including a bracelet, necklace, and ring. Following a meticulous forensic examination of the entire house, the police sequestered some of Jasvir's personal belongings, including his phone, iPad, and notably a wedding album featuring Varka and Jasvir. After meticulous scrutiny of the photos, the police made a startling discovery. Varka was wearing the same jewelry later found in the furnace by the forensic team. This revelation sparked a crucial question: did the remains belong to Varka? With these suspicions in mind, the police turned their attention to Jasvir, grilling him about his wife's whereabouts. Initially, Jasvir feigned ignorance, claiming Varka had deceived him and fled. But when confronted with the incriminating evidence gathered by forensic experts, he became visibly agitated. His story promptly shifted as he attempted to spin a new narrative for the police. Jasvir and Varka got married in March 2013, but he was initially hesitant. He was won over by her charm, and they had a grand celebration. A few months later, Varka moved to England, but then confessed she had only married him to gain independence and move. Jasvir was furious, and their arguments escalated, including a nasty fight on September 12th. Later, when Varka failed to return home at night, Jasvir's worry turned to alarm, prompting him to file a complaint at the police station. However, the police were skeptical of Jasvir's story. They subsequently questioned Jasvir's neighbors and friends, who described Varka as friendly, polite, and well-liked, while Jasvir's friends reluctantly shared disturbing details about his preference for men over women. Undeterred, Jasvir continued to fabricate stories to mislead the police. However, their investigation uncovered incriminating photos on Jasvir's iPad, which revealed a telling aspect of his personality. The police then intensified their interrogation, and Jasvir eventually cracked under the pressure, recounting a vastly different story. Jasvir confessed to the police that he had a violent fight with Varka on September 12th, during which he lost control and choked her with a vacuum cleaner pipe, resulting in her tragic death. He then transported her body to the garden, where a furnace was located, and burned it. However, this wasn't Jasvir's true story. In reality, Jasvir had known he was gay and attracted to men since he was 12. After completing his education in India, he moved to England, where he landed a job at a bank. In 2008, he began a relationship with a gay man and had also confided in some close friends about his sexual orientation. In 2013, Jasvir's family began pressuring him to get married soon. Unwilling to reveal his true identity to his family, Jasvir agreed to marry Varka. After bringing Varka to England, their relationship remained platonic. However, when Varka discovered inappropriate pictures of Jasvir with his gay partner on his iPad, their disagreements turned into arguments, with Varka threatening to expose Jasvir's secret to his family. Jasvir was consumed by rage when he strangled Varka, ultimately leading to her death. In an attempt to dispose of her body, he burned her in the furnace, but the pungent smell of burning flesh alerted the neighbors, who promptly notified the authorities. On the morning of September 13th, Jasvir returned to the furnace, only to find that some remains were still intact, prompting him to douse the body with petrol and set it ablaze once more. However, the putrid smell spread again, and when the police arrived at Jasvir's doorstep for the second time, they apprehended him as the husband who had murdered his new bride upon her discovery of his sexual orientation. Jasvir, a native of Warsaw, brutally killed Varani just a few months into their marriage. The news sent shockwaves through both Jasvir's and Varka's families. Jasvir's family struggled to come to terms with their son's sexuality, while Varka's family was consumed by grief. The evidence against Jasvir was overwhelming, and he was subsequently taken into custody and brought to trial at Wolverhampton Crown Court. Although Jasvir initially attempted to denial and deceive to avoid punishment, he was eventually sentenced to life imprisonment after a grueling 3-month trial. Furthermore, he would be ineligible for parole for at least 20 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ali Kemp. Alexandra Ali Elizabeth Kemp was born on October 11, 1982, in Leawood, Kansas, a city on the border of Kansas and Missouri. As the eldest of 3 children and the only daughter, she grew up in a loving family. After graduating from high school with honors, Alexandra enrolled at Kansas State University. She had big plans for her life, including a trip she wanted to take in 2002. When she finished her first year of university, Alexandra returned to her hometown of Leawood for the summer vacation. There, she found a part-time job at an outdoor swimming pool not far from her parents' house, where her younger brother Tyler worked. The pool was primarily used by people living in the neighborhood, so it was not a busy place. Interestingly, the pool is still in operation today. On June 18, 2002, Alexandra was supposed to be at work, but when Tyler arrived at the pool for his shift at 5 p.m., he couldn't find her. Her mobile phone and purse were still on the table where she usually sat, but she was nowhere to be seen. Confused, Tyler called their parents, and their father, Roger Kemp, rushed to the scene. Initially, Roger checked the pool but didn't see Alexandra. Next, he went to the small pump room near the pool, which stored water purification equipment, a ladder, and other items. Upon inspection, Roger didn't notice anything suspicious at first, but then he spotted a leg sticking out from under a tarp. When he lifted the tarp, he found his brutally beaten daughter, Alexandra. She was naked from the waist down and had severe bruises on her face and body. Roger immediately called 911, begging Alexandra not to leave him as he spoke to the operator. When the ambulance arrived, Roger was performing CPR on Alexandra. They rushed her to the hospital, but despite their best efforts, Alexandra was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The cause of her death was determined to be strangulation, and although her body was partially naked, there was no evidence of forced intimacy before her death. While awaiting the DNA analysis results from Alexandra's body, police sealed off the pool area to search for evidence that could lead them to the perpetrator. In the room where Roger discovered Alexandra's body, clear signs of a struggle were evident. Her flip-flops were found in 2 separate locations. Additionally, an open antiseptic gel and its cap were discovered by the police. A few days later, as the police continued their desperate hunt for the perpetrator, the family and hundreds of sympathizers gathered to bid farewell to Alexandra in a funeral ceremony. The first person suspected in Alexandra's murder was her boyfriend, Phil Howes, whom she had been dating since high school. At the time, Phil worked as a pool administrator, and on the day of her death, he was working the morning shift. Alexandra arrived at noon and was scheduled to work for 5 hours. Although Phil often stayed late to spend time with her, on this particular day, they had plans for the evening, so he left right after his shift ended. By the time Alexandra's brother arrived, she was already deceased, her body hidden under a tarp in the pump room. Despite being an initial suspect, Phil had a solid alibi and was quickly cleared by the police. During their investigation, detectives learned from Phil that Alexandra felt uncomfortable being alone at the pool because some of the lawnmowers would stare at her and try to flirt. Although the lawnmowers were questioned, they all had alibis for the time of Alexandra's death. However, the police did discover some potentially relevant information. Several people reported seeing a strange man lurking in the bushes with a video camera, apparently watching the girls in swimsuits near the pool the day before Alexandra's murder. Additionally, a witness claimed to have seen the suspicious man leave in an old Ford pickup truck. Experts analyzed the activity on the girl's mobile phone and discovered that she had communicated with her friend Laurel on the day of her death. They had even made plans to meet. Laurel was subsequently questioned by the police at the station. According to her, Alexandra had asked her to keep her company until her shift ended. Since the weather was poor, the pool was deserted, which made Alexandra uneasy. Laurel stated that she arrived at the pool around 2:30 p.m., parking her car near the fence, but Alexandra was nowhere to be seen. Laurel honked her horn, hoping Alexandra would come out, but instead, a man emerged from the pool house. He looked at her and waved with a smile. Laurel didn't recognize the man and assumed he was Alexandra's boss, so she decided to leave to avoid causing trouble for her friend. At the time, she thought Alexandra would get in trouble if her boss found out she was socializing during work hours. However, the man was neither Alexandra's boss nor a co-worker. The police were almost certain that Laurel had seen the perpetrator. Based on Laurel's description, the police worked with a forensic artist to create a sketch of the suspect they were looking for. A white male, approximately 30 years old, with a stocky build, short brown hair, and driving an older Ford pickup truck from the 1980s. Among the numerous tips they received, one person pointed out that a man named James Strader bore a strong resemblance to the suspect in the sketch. Strader not only matched the physical description, but also owned an old Ford pickup truck and worked as a mechanic just 20 minutes from the pool where Alexandra Kemp was last seen. When the police brought Strader in for questioning, they were struck by his resemblance to the sketch. However, Strader denied any involvement in Alexandra's death, and his employer corroborated his alibi, confirming that Strader was at work on the day of her death. In the end, the police were forced to release Strader due to a lack of evidence. At the same time, a laboratory report disclosed that a tube of antiseptic gel found at the crime scene and on Alexandra's body contained male DNA. While this finding yielded no significant leads, as the DNA did not match any profiles in the police databases. However, the police were able to clear Alexandra's friends, family, and boyfriend of suspicion, as their DNA samples did not match the DNA discovered at the scene. Alexandra's father, Roger Kemp, played a crucial role in advancing the investigation. After his daughter's devastating death, he initially felt lost, but he soon discovered a new sense of purpose in pursuing justice for her. As he expressed in an interview, he had two choices: either stay in bed and give up, or go out and fight. He chose to fight. Impressed by his determination, the police allocated a dedicated space for him at the station, enabling him to gather and share information and collaborate with the investigators on potential leads. After checking all the clues available at that time, Roger, together with the investigators, contacted the producers of the television program America's Most Wanted and asked to make an episode about the death of Alexandra. The creators agreed, and at one point, it was the longest-running program on television and consisted of 24 seasons. After Alexandra's story aired, the police started receiving hundreds of calls with information, but they checked all the clues, none of which led to a breakthrough. The investigation again reached a dead end. In February 2003, 8 months after Alexandra's death, a promising new lead emerged. Following their search efforts, the police arrested a suspect in Utah. Interestingly, 3 individuals, 2 women and a 14-year-old girl who were complete strangers, independently reported to the authorities that they had been forced into intimate encounters with the same man, with only a few days separating the incidents. Although the suspect initially fled, he was eventually tracked down and apprehended in Utah. Upon arrest, it was discovered that the suspect was James Strader, the very individual whom the Kansas police had questioned earlier. Strader bore a remarkable resemblance to the suspect's sketch, but mysteriously, his DNA sample had not been taken at the time, possibly due to his employers convincing the police that Strader was at work on the day of the crime and had not left the premises. Now, it seemed as though the Alexandra Kemp case was on the verge of being solved, but Strader once again denied any involvement in her death. Although he acknowledged a strong resemblance to the suspect's portrait, he claimed not to have been near the pool on that particular day. He did, however, provide a DNA sample for analysis. Unfortunately, the results proved frustrating for everyone involved. His DNA failed to match the DNA found on Alexandra's body and the antiseptic gel tube. In the end, Strader was sentenced to prison on unrelated charges, and the investigation into the Alexandra Kemp case again stalled. A year had passed since Alexandra's death, but the police still had no leads or suspects. Her father, Roger Kemp, and her boyfriend, Phil Howes, who was also the president of the student community, continued to fight for justice. Phil used email to spread the portrait of the suspected killer among students at other universities, and he also asked student communities at other educational institutions to watch the episode about Alexandra on America's Most Wanted. Despite the efforts made by her family and the police, however, no results were achieved. Another year went by, but Roger refused to give up. He persisted in his struggle for justice for his daughter and contacted America's Most Wanted again, asking them to re-air the episode about Alexandra's death. The show's creators asked Roger if there was any new information in the case, and he replied that there was none. The determination of a father who had lost his daughter impressed the show's creators, and they decided to show the episode again. After the police received a large number of calls, Roger offered a $25,000 reward for any information that could help identify the person who took Alexandra's life. The city of Leawood authorities increased the reward to $50,000. To spread the word, Roger posted his daughter's image, the suspect's sketch, and reward information in newspapers. One day, while driving along the highway, Roger noticed billboards and realized they could be an effective way to grab people's attention. He contacted several advertising agencies to inquire about the cost of placing the necessary information on a billboard. One of the agencies Roger called was Lamar Advertising Company. However, when the company's owner learned that Roger Kemp wanted to rent a billboard, he refused to accept payment. Instead, he offered to post the information for free on multiple billboards. Roger decided to post the suspect's sketch and reward information on billboards along one of the state's busiest highways. Hundreds of clues flooded in, which the police took time to investigate. Some clues, however, kept pointing to the same individual. 2 unrelated people had come forward, mentioning a man named Teddy Hoover, who drove an old Ford pickup truck and worked in pool maintenance. His appearance matched the suspect's description. Given the numerous matches, the police didn't think it was a coincidence. They began searching for Teddy Hoover and soon found his address in Kansas. They headed to his residence immediately. When the police arrived, Hoover answered the door, looking startled and visibly anxious. While it's natural for people to feel nervous when the police show up at their doorstep, Hoover's reaction didn't necessarily indicate guilt. The officers asked about his whereabouts on June 18, 2002. As one might expect, Hoover claimed he couldn't recall, given that it had been 2 years since the incident, and it's common for people to forget specific details about their whereabouts on a particular day from a few years prior. He also denied any involvement in the maintenance of the pool where Alexandra worked. However, the detectives requested that Hoover provide a voluntary DNA sample to eliminate him as a suspect. Hoover responded that he needed to consult with a lawyer first and would contact the police himself after doing so. About a day later, Hoover's lawyer reached out to investigators, expressing his client's concern that his DNA sample might end up in a database, allegedly due to Teddy's belief in conspiracy theories and fears that the police would use it against him in other cases. The investigators reassured Hoover that they would not enter his DNA into any database and would only use it to determine if it matched the DNA found on Alexandra Kemp. The lawyer said he would discuss this with his client and follow up with a call. As they waited for the call, the police reviewed the case files again and stumbled upon a familiar name in one of the folders. It turned out that on the day Alexandra died, detectives had interviewed onlookers by the pool, hoping to gather information about potential witnesses. Interestingly, one of the people they spoke to was Ted Hoover himself. This meant that Hoover had been at the crime scene, despite his earlier claim to detectives that he had never been there. As the minutes ticked by, the police grew increasingly convinced that Ted Hoover might be the suspect they had been searching for over the past 2 years. After several days of waiting, investigators reached out to Hoover's lawyer to ask if his client was ready to provide a DNA sample. The lawyer's response caught them off guard. He revealed that Hoover had fired him and stopped responding to his calls. The police promptly went to Hoover's house, only to find that their prime suspect had already fled the scene. A 29-year-old man, Hoover was subsequently placed on the National Wanted list, but he proved to be elusive, leaving behind no trace of his whereabouts. Billboards displaying the suspect's image remained in place, and detectives had been searching for Teddy Hoover Leawood for months without making an arrest. Then, in September 2004, a caller contacted the police claiming to have information about the suspect. He revealed that he knew the name of Teddy's girlfriend, Laura Barr, with whom he lived in Kansas. The detectives decided to locate this woman, but discovered that she had left the state around the same time Teddy escaped. The U.S. Postal Service informed the Kansas State Police that Laura Barr was receiving mail in Litchfield, Connecticut, at the same address as a man named Benjamin Appleby. The house where they lived was in a secluded rural area, leading the police to suspect that Benjamin Appleby was either a pseudonym or the real name of Teddy Hoover Leawood. The detectives requested assistance from the Connecticut State Police to find Appleby. It was revealed that in 1997, the man had a run-in with the law in Connecticut, resulting in a warrant for his arrest. He had exposed himself in front of a schoolgirl, but Benjamin Appleby fled the state, evading capture by the police. Now, with an arrest warrant in hand, detectives headed to the address where Benjamin Appleby received his mail. Upon arrival, they found Appleby at home and promptly arrested him, as the Kansas detective suspected that Appleby and Teddy Hoover were one and the same person. It was a familiar scenario for Appleby, who had previously fled Connecticut in 1997 after getting into trouble with the law, adopting the pseudonym Teddy Hoover to avoid detection. However, when Kansas detectives sought a DNA sample to investigate his possible involvement in Alexandra Kemp's death, Appleby returned to Connecticut, reverting to his real name and attempting to keep a low profile, hoping that his past misdeeds had been forgotten. Appleby refused to be extradited to Kansas, so the Leawood detectives traveled to Connecticut to investigate. Anticipating Appleby's claim of innocence, the detectives devised a plan to deceive him. Before bringing him into the interrogation room, they set the stage by hanging crime scene photos, as well as pictures of Alexandra and Appleby, and placing folders with his name on the table. The police orchestrated the scene to give Appleby the impression that the investigation had a thorough understanding of his activities. When Appleby entered the interrogation room, he was unable to speak. One of the detectives asked him, "What do you think will happen when we obtain a sample of your DNA?" Moments later, Appleby broke down in tears and confessed that he was responsible for Alexandra's death. He recounted the events of that overcast June day. Appleby had seen Alexandra and found her attractive, so he decided to approach her. When she entered the pump room, he followed her, locking the door behind her to trap her inside. When Appleby touched Alexandra, she fought back, feeling humiliated. Enraged, he started beating and strangling her. Alexandra lost consciousness, and Appleby attempted to fulfill his lust, partially undressing her. He took a tube of antiseptic gel from the first aid kit, intending to use it as a lubricant. However, Alexandra's friend, who was waiting in the car behind the fence and honking the horn, interrupted his plan. Fearing being caught, Appleby covered the body and fled the room. When he saw Alexandra's friend, he smiled and waved at her, attempting to conceal his true actions. Next, Benjamin Appleby drove away in his pickup truck. A few hours later, he returned to the scene of the crime, where a crowd had gathered by the pool. The DNA analysis was conclusive. The DNA found on the tube with gel and on Alexandra's body matched Appleby's. After more than 2 years, and largely due to Roger Kemp's efforts, the police had finally identified the man responsible for taking Alexandra's life. Appleby informed investigators that he was willing to accept full responsibility and plead guilty in order to bring a swift resolution to the case and spare Alexandra's family from having to endure further emotional distress. However, during the initial court hearing, he reversed his stance, proclaiming his innocence and attributing his earlier confession to coercion. Notwithstanding, disputing the DNA analysis serves no purpose, given that only one DNA sample was found on the victim's body, and that sample belonged to Benjamin Appleby. Benjamin Appleby's lawyers argued that their client didn't intend to kill Alexandra Kemp. Although Appleby admitted to taking her life, he denied doing so intentionally. However, forensic experts pointed out that he strangled the girl for about 10 minutes, during which time he could have stopped but chose not to. The prosecution believed he went to the pool solely to observe her. On June 18, 2002, the cloudy weather and empty pool worked to his advantage. In December 2005, a jury found Appleby guilty, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole in 50 years. He received an additional 19 years for attempting to force intimacy with Alexandra in 2019. Appleby appealed the court's decision, but the life sentence for first-degree murder remained in place. The appeals court ruled that the attempt to force intimacy was already considered during the initial sentencing, so Appleby was essentially sentenced twice for the same act. As a result, the second conviction was overturned. Even if Appleby is released on parole, he will be 81 years old at that time. The authorities credited Roger Kemp's perseverance for leading to the capture of the criminal. Following Appleby's arrest, Roger and his wife established a self-defense program for girls, which ultimately taught tens of thousands of girls and women across the country basic self-defense techniques. The concept of using billboards to raise awareness was not novel. Roger Kemp's dedication to the investigation and his subsequent contributions to society did not go unnoticed. He was awarded the Presidential Citizens Medal by Barack Obama at the White House. Roger Kemp passed away on March 1, 2022, at the age of 77. Until his final days, he worked tirelessly at a foundation named after his daughter, driven by the hope that his efforts might save at least one person's life. Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Tristan Baras. On April 10, 2019, a significant tragedy occurred involving 17-year-old Tristan Baras. This teenager, from a devout family, violently attacked and killed his relatives at their home in Deep Gap, North Carolina. On that Wednesday evening, emergency services received a call from a young woman. She reported a large amount of blood in her home and mentioned that her parents and younger brother were missing. Attempts to reach them had been unsuccessful. Police officers immediately responded to the situation, driving to the family home in Deep Gap, located near the Watauga and Wilkes County border. Upon arrival, they discovered blood on the walkway leading to the house, on the mat by the front door, and trailing inside up the stairs. As officers searched outside the home, they found a man's body covered with leaves under a hammock. The man had multiple stab wounds. Later that night, at about 10:30 p.m., authorities found the family's pickup truck concealed in the woods. Inside was the woman's body covered with a blanket and bags of mulch placed on top of her. Jeffrey Baras, Tristan's father, was born on April 16, 1975. He served as pastor of Pist Bible Fellowship Church, a conservative Protestant movement with Mennonite roots. Tristan grew up in an environment emphasizing personal piety and constant awareness of God's watchful eye. Serious Bible study sessions and moral instructions formed the basis of his upbringing. Even entertainment like laughter or colorful clothing was frowned upon within this community. Things such as good works, charity, missionary work, love for one's enemies, and renunciation of all forms of violence were highly valued virtues. Jeffrey upheld these principles as well, since he was raised under similar circumstances by Pastor Harry Baras. As a boy and young man, Jeffrey exemplified kindness, gentleness, and patience. During his youth as a young adult man, Jeffrey worked at Big Surf Water Park located on Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri during summer breaks from schooling routines back then. On his first day of work, the young man encountered a charming and meek girl named Tanya Mae Trandom. She was of the same age, had similar views, and shared almost identical upbringing with him. Tanya, like Jeffrey, was raised in a family where Christian values were of utmost importance. A patient and humble girl, she saw in the devout man an ideal future husband and a caring father. She gave Jeffrey a picture of an elderly couple holding hands and remarked, "That will be us one day." Jeffrey's mother, Kathy Brown, prayed earnestly that God would bless her son with a wife who loved the Lord wholeheartedly. She believed her prayers were answered when Jeffrey met Tanya. The young couple married and continued living according to the values they were taught in their own families. The photo presented by Tanya was carefully preserved in their family album. Soon after their marriage, the couple welcomed their first child, an adorable girl named Taylor. Not long after Taylor's birth came 3 more children, the youngest being a son named Tristan. Taylor embraced her role as the eldest sibling wholeheartedly. She took care of her brothers and sisters, constantly supporting them. Among all her siblings, she had a special bond with her younger brother Tristan. Despite their age difference, they were inseparable. Jeffrey and Tanya held firm beliefs about parenting, viewing it as their mission to instill Christian values in their children's hearts. As their 4 children grew older, they decided to extend their family further by adopting 4 more boys from an orphanage. Open-hearted and loving according to others' descriptions, their family expanded to include 8 children: Taylor, twins Kay and Alexis, Misery, Ale, Stephen, Miku, and Tristan. In line with the family's religious beliefs, children were not permitted to use cell phones or social networks until reaching a certain age. They emphasized simplicity in needs and desires as well. Additionally, boys were forbidden to engage in romantic relationships until they completed high school at 18 years old. Bible study sessions and other religious activities were mandatory components of their upbringing. Despite these guidelines rooted in asceticism and discipline, the children grew up like any other boys and girls, with love and support from their devoted parents guiding them along the way. Parents made no distinction between native and adopted children. They all received the same attention, care, and affection. The loving mother fostered a harmonious atmosphere, carefully monitoring the internal relationships among brothers and sisters. She prayed frequently and engaged in various good deeds. The couple believed in nurturing virtue through their actions and instilled mercy in their children by setting an example. When a hurricane struck Haiti, Tanya sold her expensive wedding ring and donated the proceeds to a foundation dedicated to building housing for the victims. In place of her costly ring, she acquired a simple, modest one. In 2015, Taylor graduated from high school and moved to Boone to attend Appalachian State University. This event was particularly difficult for Tristan, as he lost his closest companion and found himself alone. Although Taylor returned home at every opportunity, she now had her own independent life, leaving Tristan with the same old rules and routines that he'd always opposed. Tristan had long rebelled against the restrictions his parents imposed since childhood and disagreed with their religious views. He was particularly frustrated by the lack of a cell phone and the inability to connect with peers on social networks, an integral part of modern teenage life. After Taylor's departure, quarrels with his parents increased. In December 2017, there were significant changes within the family's life. Jeffrey, his wife, and their children moved to a new house with a large lot in Deep Gap, Watauga County, North Carolina. The house was situated on a dirt road leading into a wooded area and offered much more space than their previous home. Additionally, it was located just under 2 miles from Robin's residence, Tanya's mother, and the children's grandmother, making it easy to seek her help when needed for looking after the youngest children. He attended the local high school and began participating in and field. Other kids took jobs as counselors at summer camps. At first glance, it might have seemed that there was never any trouble in the Borlas household. Over time, Tristan's behavior became troubling. In 2018, the school insisted on several consultations with a psychologist due to anger issues and a lack of control. By 2019, when Tristan was in high school, he started having trouble understanding some school subjects. These difficulties grew with each passing day. From being a diligent student who always participated in school activities before the move, he turned into an indifferent and withdrawn teenager with a lack of interest in his studies. Tristan began arriving late for lessons and showed no desire to learn at all. It got to the point where he would put his headphones on during class and sit with an absent expression. Some teachers tried to help Tristan, and he even made contact, but everything ended with unchanged indifference. At home, Tristan's behavior also became a concern. By this time, he had everything but constantly argued with his parents about his cell phone and access to social networks. He spent considerable time on the internet. On his Instagram account, he referred to himself as a musician. His sister Taylor remained interested in her siblings' lives and noticed that Tristan quarreled more frequently with their parents and argued about religious topics with their mother. She also learned of his other problems at school. The sister attempted to talk to her brother, but realized their former closeness was gone. After some time, Tristan befriended a girl from the religious community named Evelyn Faith Jackson. They began meeting without particularly observing prohibitions on intimate relations. Sometimes they even smoked forbidden substances together. Tristan expressed complaints about his mother's nightly discussions regarding his behavior, which left him feeling tired and unable to concentrate in school. The young man grew very concerned that many of his faults caused him not to live up to his mother's expectations. She can't take pride in him, told that he can be himself with his father, but it's different with his mother. On April 10, 2019, a lot of secrets from Tristan's life came to light. Surveillance cameras were installed in the barn. Tristan's old cell phone, which he occasionally used without his parents knowing, was used as an access point. On this particular day, Tanya took the phone for some reason and discovered text messages indicating her son was having inappropriate conversations with girls and discussing illegal drugs. Tristan was at school when he noticed his phone blinking with incoming messages. His shocked parents confronted him through a family chat about what they had found on the old phone. That same day, Sher King, an English teacher in Tristan's class, called his mother to complain about his grades and behavior. During the trial, it was revealed that Tanya Borlas had called Miss King back, informing her that she and her husband would soon come to the school to pick Tristan up to discuss his academic performance. Miss King conveyed this message to Tristan, who was quite surprised by the news. The couple left their youngest child with his grandmother and headed to the middle school to address these issues. The ride home was silent. At trial, Tristan testified that his mother appeared tense and frowned frequently while going through his phone. A conversation ensued at home for about an hour and a half. Afterward, Tanya texted her mother stating that although they had taken away Tristan's phone and car keys until his grades and behavior improved, he did not seem upset by this. She informed her mother that she would be coming soon to pick up the younger child. This message was sent at 4 p.m., after which it seems the discussion continued. From Tristan's account, he and his mother talked about the importance of doing well in school and maintaining cleanliness at home. He was forced to listen and realized there was a lot in him needing correction. They even made a list of qualities should develop to become a better person: compassion, honesty. This list would later be found by the police. At one point, Tristan said his mother approached him from behind, put her arm around his neck, and applied pressure. He instinctively jumped up, turned around, and accidentally her. According to him, his mother had never done anything like that before, so he reacted that way. His mother was startled by the blow, grabbed what he thought were scissors from a shelf, and moved toward her son. In shock at what was happening, he stabbed her thinking he was defending himself and ran to his father for help. Later forensic examination found no evidence on Tristan's neck, indicating his mother strangled him. During the trial, the prosecution showed photos of Tristan Baras's neck taken by the medical examiner that displayed a broken neck bone. On the other hand, the psychologist would explain during the trial that in his opinion Tristan Baras was mentally sane at the time of the crime, but suffered from a severely impaired cognitive state. He was experiencing depersonalization, derealization, and felt events were unreal. However, the court and jury, they would disregard the psychologist's opinion, finding Tristan to be a skillful manipulator and socially dangerous individual. According to Tristan, he did not understand what was happening, or why his father was running away from him, or why he stabbed him when he caught up even though he begged for help. He remembered his father picking up a rock saying, "Tristan, don't," but thought his father would rather let him be killed than try to harm him. Neighbors later reported hearing loud screams on the Baras property at about 5:30 p.m. that Wednesday. After it was over, Tristan returned to the house where he vomited, indicating severe stress, not cold-blooded, calculated murder in the psychologist's opinion. The jury disagreed with the psychologist's opinion because they had seen the forensic medical examiner's reports during the trial. Jeffrey B.'s autopsy report detailed multiple stab wounds to his left chest back, slash wounds his arms and hands, and abrasions his skull and forehead. Tanya Borla's autopsy report showed that she had multiple wounds in her left chest and arm, while as injuries likely sustained from neck compression. These findings suggested that the parents were defending themselves rather than attacking. Tristan had an opportunity to escape from his mother if he felt threatened. Even if the mother experienced a sudden lapse of judgment or misperceived self-defense, the father's murder and subsequent actions appeared different. Tristan returned home, removed his mother's body, placed it in a truck under a tarp, cleaned the crime scene for about an hour, and even used a hose to wash down the porch. Around 8:30 p.m., Tristan went to his grandmother's house to pick up his younger brother. His brother Robin thought this was very strange. Tristan explained that his parents urgently needed to go to the store and apologized for not having time to stop by to pick up his brother. About 20 minutes later, Robin received a call from another grandson who complained that their parents were not answering the phone and hadn't come to pick him up from work as usual. Grandma called Alexis and asked her to retrieve her brother. They agreed to meet at Jeffrey and Tanya's house to figure out what had happened. When they arrived at the house, Robin noticed blood on the porch, but wasn't overly concerned since the couple raised animals there. She went inside to get a flashlight to check on them and discovered blood everywhere. At this point, Alexis ran into the house reporting she found some kind of body under a hammock near the animal barn and thought she saw Tristan with blood on his face in a getaway car. Alexis called emergency services. The operator instructed her and all family members to lock themselves in the car and wait for the police. The police arrived 10 minutes later. After several hours of waiting outside and talking to officers, they were taken to the station where they were informed that Jeffrey and Tanya Barasi had been found dead. While examining the crime scene, detectives found a computer interface in the home. It connected the video surveillance system inside the house to the monitors. Detectives saw a screen with a grid of various cameras broadcasting live video feeds. They immediately requested a warrant to obtain credentials from the servicing company. Meanwhile, Tristan contacted his girlfriend Evelyn and went over to her home. She noticed he seemed worried and had a few scratches on his forehead and arms. Tristan assured her that he had only argued with his parents and got the scratches while playing with his dog. Evelyn described Tristan's injuries: 3 scratches on his forehead, a wound on his hand, a cut on his finger, and a bruised fingernail. Right after the crime, Tristan posted a photo of his injuries on Snapchat, saying he was hurt by his father's dog. According to Evelyn, this photo matched what she saw that evening. Tristan stayed over that night. The next morning, they went to Walmart and McDonald's, but decided against going to school. Evelyn thought Tristan just wanted some time away from his parents, so she suggested staying with one of her relatives for a while. He agreed, and they traveled to another state. On April 11th, Sheriff's Office personnel obtained the username and password to the Barasi home's video surveillance system. After reviewing the camera footage, they learned about the circumstances of the crime. Police obtained a warrant for Tristan's arrest and turned over details about their vehicle. He allegedly drove away to the National Crime Information Center. A search of the car began, and soon after, a chase ensued. Investigator Matthew received intel that Tristan had been spotted in Tennessee and quickly began the paperwork necessary to catch the alleged perpetrator. He requested Robin, Tristan's grandmother, to accompany him during the apprehension so he could speak to Tristan in her presence due to his young age. As they were driving with Evelyn, Tristan noticed blue lights trailing them. He accelerated and told his friend that his parents must have registered the car as stolen to locate him. Speeding down the highway, he tried to evade capture, but eventually pulled over when he couldn't escape his pursuers any longer. The Ford was quickly surrounded by police cars. Evelyn was utterly confused upon witnessing her boyfriend being handcuffed and taken away in a squad car. The officers observed that Tristan did not appear particularly upset or agitated. On April 11, 2019, investigator Matthew conducted an interview with Tristan. It was both videotaped and audio recorded. The young man answered all questions, confessed to the crime, and detailed his actions in full, occasionally breaking into tears. Tristan Baras, who was just a month shy of his 18th birthday, was taken into custody without bail. Shortly thereafter, the sheriff's office secured a warrant to search Tristan's Snapchat account, along with 5 cell phones that could contain pertinent information related to the crime. Another warrant was issued for the Orchard Road home, where detectives discovered another phone in the master bedroom, alongside various items including a keyboard, pen from a safe, paper cups, hammer, straw, knives, red-stained swab eyeglasses, kitchen towel hammock, digital video recorder, rug, and miscellaneous papers. South Dakota Cards Boots. According to court documents, a search warrant was also issued for the Ford F-150 truck, where investigators seized a red-stained swab laptop, top computer charger, and steering wheel cover. Additionally, authorities obtained a warrant to search the home of Tristan's girlfriend in Boone since he had spent the night at her house. Court documents state that a pillowcase, a zippered sweatshirt, and a notebook were seized from the property. The findings from the investigations and searches enabled investigators to piece together the chronology of events in great detail. The claim of self-defense was found to be untenable. Funeral services for the couple took place on April 17, 2019, at Bible Fellowship Church, with pastors William C.R. and Brad Gray officiating the ceremony. The children, grappling with the loss of their parents at such a young age, managed to write an emotive obituary. Our parents never got the opportunity to live for themselves because they always lived for us. Jeff and Tanya have always brought immense joy and pride to their parents. Our parents made the world a better place, and we aim to continue that legacy by passionately loving people and pursuing faith. After the funeral, Taylor visited her brother in prison for the first time and was taken aback by his demeanor. Tristan showed no remorse and attempted to lay blame on the family for the incident. To his sister, it appeared he believed he would regain his freedom eventually. Disgusted, Taylor left. Her second visit was on May 11th for Tristan's birthday, accompanied by Grandma Robin. However, this meeting fared no better than the last. Her brother boasted about a party thrown for him in prison to celebrate his birthday, a behavior Taylor found unacceptable considering their parents' tragic death. Following this visit, the family decided to sever all contact with Tristan. The trial began on February 16, 2022. During proceedings, Tristan expressed regret for what had transpired and concurred with everything his family had said about him. He supported a permanent ban on contact to ensure his family's sense of safety. On March 3rd, Tristan Baras was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for each count of first-degree murder. Judge Horn noted that mental health issues were considered as somewhat mitigating factors during sentencing. According to the psychologist's report, Tristan Baras continues to suffer from anxiety, depression, and exhibits symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder. However, Judge Horn noted that the psychologist found no indication of psychotic disorders. Although the anxiety and depression may have been exacerbated by continued drug use, what's particularly unusual in this case is that neither Tristan's family, nor his lawyer, nor he himself provided any statements about his motives behind the crime. Here we have a perplexing situation: a devout family with a socially dangerous individual who abused illegal drugs and couldn't fully grasp or articulate the reasons for his actions. On one hand, there's a young man with low self-esteem who exhibits symptoms of anxiety and hasn't received adequate medical care. During the court session, it was mentioned that his mother helped him cope with panic attacks since she experienced them herself. One foundational principle of certain educational theories posits that children burdened with original sin are inherently immoral from birth. Therefore, education must correct them by imposing strict discipline and suppressing their self-awareness. This so-called strict love is supposedly beneficial for children. Tristan might have had an inherited overreactivity of the nervous system and grew up under stringent limits, constantly feeling inadequate as a devout individual. Some require more love, while others require less. According to recollections shared by his older sister, Tristan was intensely jealous of new siblings who diverted parental attention away from him. Initially rebellious, he then sank into depression and feelings of worthlessness, compounded by illicit drug use and subsequent panic attacks, as well as depersonalization, derealization states. He couldn't embrace his parents' devotion to their faith and couldn't meet his mother's expectations or align with what she envisioned for him, which required correction. Instead of securing a competent therapist's assistance as needed, changes were listed together by him and his mother. This approach may have missed critical opportunities to address underlying issues. Could this senseless and tragic event have been avoided in a truly loving family? That remains uncertain, a question echoic in the aftermath. Massive surge going on right now at the New Hampshire home where a missing little girl's father and stepmother used to live. Harmony Montgomery vanished while in her father's custody years ago at the age of 5. Investigators may have a new lead in the Harmony Montgomery chase 2 years after the little girl was last seen. I think the FBI is here, so there's something.
There's something, yeah. They found there's gotta be the I think there's something that's sitting on it.
In December 2021, the name Harmony Montgomery first hit headlines across the United States of America when a missing persons investigation was launched to find the 7-year-old girl. Since then, her father and stepmother have both been arrested and charged. A home where she used to live in Manchester, New Hampshire, has been searched for days on end, and the reward for information leading to her discovery has topped $140,000. But here's the strange thing. Before all of this, nobody seems to have set eyes on Harmony for more than 2 years. So, who is Harmony Montgomery? Why did it take so long for anyone to notice that this little girl has gone missing? Where has she been at all this time? And is it now too late to save her life? Hi, and welcome to Mysterious 7. I'm Michael, and today I want to take you guys through the story of little Harmony Montgomery, who dropped off the face of the earth back in 2019. Little Harmony wasn't born under a lucky star. Both her parents have a problematic history of substance abuse, and she had to cope with a visual disability and one eye through all of that. Her mother, Crystal Sorey, a resident of Massachusetts, lost custody due to addiction problems when her daughter was just about 4 years old. Sorey had to surrender Harmony to the state in the summer of 2018. After that, the girl's father, Adam Montgomery, secured sole custody in February 2019 and moved her to New Hampshire. Harmony was living with her father, Adam, as well as his wife, Kayla Montgomery, and their children at the property at the time when she went missing. The little girl had been in and out of foster care for much of her life, according to her files. Sometimes kids do get caught up in the legal system for years at a time. But Harmony wasn't one of the kids who slipped through the cracks of the foster care system. She went missing from her own father's house, and he never reported the matter, nor tried to reach out for help, nor find his daughter. So what exactly is his involvement in the disappearance of his child? Police said they first became aware of the case when they received a call from the girl's mother, Crystal Sorey, in November 2021. She had been trying to locate her daughter for months, but said she had been blocked by her ex-husband from contacting her. She said she last saw her daughter during a FaceTime video call with Adam Montgomery around Easter 2019. Sorey told the police that since then, she unsuccessfully made attempts to find Harmony by contacting various schools and driving by addresses associated with Adam Montgomery. She said last year, he and his partner Kayla blocked all communication with her. According to news reports, Sorey had been sharing concerns over Harmony's well-being with Blair and Jonathan Miller, a couple who fostered and eventually adopted Harmony's younger brother Jameson in June 2019. The two were also actively trying to make a connection with Harmony and told Sorey multiple times they'd adopt her if the need arose. Harmony spent a lot of time in foster care with her younger biological brother Jameson. It seems that the couple, who said they repeatedly told Harmony's mother that they were willing to adopt the girl if need be, was very much interested in the hunt for the missing child. The couple actively tried to make contact with Harmony throughout the past 2 years, as they said Jameson missed her and that he'd cry at night for her. The couple said they weren't ever able to speak with Harmony and kept in touch with Sorey about her attempts to open a line of communication with the girl's father. On November 18, 2021, Sorey reported Harmony missing to the Manchester Police Department. Sorey made her first public appearance at the candlelight vigil on January 8th after authorities searched the last known residence of her daughter. "I just don't feel that in my heart," Sorey told reporters at the time. "Like, I don't feel like I lost her. And a mother knows. A mother knows if your baby's here or not. I know she's here." She had this message for her daughter. "Hi, baby. If you can see me and hear me, I want you to know that I never stopped looking for you, and I won't stop fighting until I find you, okay? You stay strong, and Mommy's right here fighting for you. I love you. Now this is where the timeline of events starts to get confusing, and that's typically the point in any investigation when you know someone has been lying. Mrs. Sori told police she had not been able to contact her daughter since they spoke on a video call in April 2019. After that, she said, Montgomery cut off all contact between her and her daughter. But Montgomery claimed to investigators he last saw his daughter around Thanksgiving 2019, claiming that Mrs. Sori had picked up her from Manchester to take her to live with her. The criminal complaint says that Montgomery claimed to believe his daughter was living with his ex and did not show much emotion or reaction when officers said they were concerned whether Harmony was alive when they contacted him in December. His story was also contradicted by Kayla Montgomery's account, who said she last saw Harmony the day after Thanksgiving, when her husband said he was driving her to see Mrs. Sori. And in some additional testimony, Adam Montgomery's uncle, Kevin Montgomery, told investigators that he had not seen Harmony or his nephew since late 2019, when she was 5 years old. Police interviews with other family members revealed Montgomery was allegedly abusive toward his daughter, including giving her a black eye, forcing her to clean the toilet with her toothbrush, and making her stand in a corner for hours as punishment. Montgomery's brother Michael Montgomery told investigators he had concerns that Adam was physically abusive to the child and was super short with her. Kevin Montgomery said he noticed Harmony had a black eye in July 2019, which his nephew confessed to causing by hitting her in the face, according to the criminal complaint. I bashed her around this house, he said his nephew told him. Kevin said he contacted DCYF at that time, and he also noticed that his nephew subjected Harmony to other forms of abusive discipline, including scrubbing a toilet with her toothbrush and her being spanked hard on the butt. A neighbor said that it was a bad situation at the property, describing lots of people living there at different times, adults seen arguing in the street, junk left piled up in the yard, and the electricity is switched off at one point. The electricity was turned off and they ran the generator all summer with the wiring running through the window. The neighbor said the Montgomerys were basically squatting at the home when it had fallen into foreclosure, and Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery were refusing to leave. We didn't intermingle with them as it was a bad situation, she said. There were lots of different people living there, piles of junk in the driveway, junk outside. She said she went away for the Thanksgiving holidays in 2019 and returned to find the family had finally packed up and moved out. And another neighbor on the street where Harmony lived also says that the family moved on Thanksgiving 2019, the same time Adam Montgomery says he last saw the missing child. Manchester police said definitively that Harmony has not been seen since around October or November 2019, when she was 5 years old, yet a missing persons investigation was only launched in December 2021. Mrs. Sori has gone on public record to state that her daughter was failed by everybody, despite multiple efforts to reach out to her daughter, or at least find out more. No authorities concerned paid attention, and the girl's father clearly couldn't care less what happened to the child. The last confirmed sighting of Harmony by law enforcement was on the 11th of September 2019, when Manchester police officers were called to the home on 77 Guilford Street in Manchester, where she lived. Police Chief Aldenburg, who is in charge of the case now, previously said the last police call-up to the property was in October 2019, but confirmed he had muddled the dates in a press briefing on the 12th of January. Despite the date change, the police chief said investigators are still working on the belief that Harmony was last seen in October or November of that year. Harmony's father and his wife were both arrested and charged on counts related to the missing child in early January. Adam Montgomery was arrested on the 4th of January and charged with second-degree felony assault, 2 misdemeanor counts of endangering the welfare of a child, and 1 misdemeanor count of interference with custody. On the assault charge, he is accused of striking Harmony in the face sometime in July 2019, giving her a black eye according to the criminal complaint. Officials said Montgomery is not cooperating with the investigation into his daughter's disappearance, and he has refused to say where she is. The day after her husband's arrest, Kayla Montgomery was also arrested on one felony charge of welfare fraud for allegedly fraudulently collecting welfare benefits for the missing children between December 2019 and June 2021. Mrs. Montgomery, who has 3 children with her husband, is accused of obtaining $1,500 in food stamp benefits meant for Harmony between December 2019 and June 2021, even though the girl was not living with them. Prosecutors have now dropped that welfare fraud charge and added 3 new charges, 1 count of theft by deception and 2 misdemeanor charges of welfare fraud. The charges accuse Mrs. Montgomery of making intentionally false statements about her stepdaughter's whereabouts in February and March 2021 to claim benefits. After the police investigation into the case amped up, several disturbing details about Harmony's father came to light. Adam Montgomery has a history of violence and a long criminal record, including convictions for shooting a man in the head in a drug deal just 6 months before Harmony was born. He was also convicted in 2010 for attacking 2 women at gunpoint. It has emerged that Montgomery is a suspect in the cold case murder of a 28-year-old man in Lynn, New Hampshire, back in February 2008. Darlin Guzman was found shot in the chest in the parking lot of the former White Hen convenience store in Lynn's Austin Square on the night of the 10th of February 2008. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. A source in Boston law enforcement told reporters that Montgomery, who was 18 at the time, and 2 members of his family, who were not named, had been the focus of the murder investigation since day 1. The 3 family members had been in contact with the victim earlier that day and planned to meet with him at the convenience store before the meeting culminated in gunfire, according to the source. The victim's car was later found abandoned in the direction of Bedford, New Hampshire, where Montgomery lived at the time. No one has ever been charged with Mr. Guzman's murder, but the source said Montgomery remains the focus of the investigation to this day. Almost 14 years on from that killing, Adam Montgomery and his wife are now charged on counts related to his missing daughter. However, while charged with serious offenses including child abuse and welfare fraud, no charges have been brought against anyone directly in connection to Harmony's disappearance. So why was Harmony not reported missing for 2 years? Mrs. Sori has accused the authorities of failing her daughter. She said she made multiple attempts to report concerns to child services. After November 18, when she contacted Manchester police saying she believed her daughter was missing, someone finally paid attention. Police officers contacted the New Hampshire Division for Children, Youth, and Families, or DCYF, about the location of the missing child. Then, on the 27th of December, the DCYF reported that it was also unable to locate Harmony. Manchester police announced a search was launched on the 31st of December. Emails sent by Mrs. Sori to the Manchester mayor's office begging for help in finding her daughter have also now come out. "Please, I'm begging for help in finding my daughter," she wrote on the 29th of December. In her emails, Mrs. Sori said Adam Montgomery had never enrolled their daughter in school and that she has missed important doctor's appointments she's had since a baby due to a disability in her eye. The emails were sent just 2 days before police finally reported Harmony missing. As well as the repeated attempts to raise the alarm, the family was well known to child services. Newly released records released on the 12th of January have emerged showing that police officers were called to the Guilford Street home at least 10 times between February 2019, when Montgomery got custody of Harmony, and when she was last seen in the fall. Reports ranged from claims of domestic disturbances to animal welfare and concerns about the living conditions in the home. The DCYF was notified about some of the incidents. New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu announced on the 12th of January that the DCYF is carrying out an internal review of its handling of Harmony's case. However, the governor defended the state's work, saying, "As soon as we found out that this child may not have been showing up for school for quite some time, it was reported up to us. The team got right on it. It wasn't a delay. It didn't sit in a file on somebody's desk." An independent investigation is also being carried out by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate after Harmony was moved from Massachusetts into the custody of her father in New Hampshire in February 2019. Now officials in New Hampshire and Massachusetts are passing the blame between each other. The New Hampshire governor sent a letter to Massachusetts court officials slamming a judge for placing Harmony in the care of her monster father, giving his violent past and long rap sheet. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker responded to the criticism by saying he felt his pain, but said he wants to wait and see the results of the independent review by the Massachusetts Office of the Child Advocate. Investigators have revealed very few details about what they think may have happened to Harmony. The Guilford Street property has been the focus of much of the search, with investigators seen in the home and the backyard for multiple days. However, Manchester police said the search had concluded there. It is not clear if anything of interest was uncovered, and no other locations where searches have been identified. Chief Aldenburg insisted on the 12th of January, but they are still working on the belief that Harmony is alive. However, he admitted that he was a little discouraged by the case so far and pleaded with the public to come forward with information. He added, "Somebody out there knows something." Despite the national attention and the painstaking efforts to find the missing child, investigators appear to have made very little headway. Though concerning, the lack of progress is perhaps unsurprising, as whoever has information about what happened to the little girl has had a more than a 2-year head start on the investigators. On the 14th of June 2022, law enforcement officials were seen transporting a refrigerator and taking potential pieces of evidence from the scene at a Manchester home where Harmony Montgomery's father and stepmother, Adam and Kayla, once lived. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendaffer stated that bringing in the refrigerator is usually used to maintain biological evidence. If they found a body or body parts in a freeze, law enforcement would want to maintain the level of decomposition. Coffendaffer said, "I have a really creepy feeling about this. It's not good." Several law enforcement agencies were seen outside the Union Street apartment complex, where investigators were focused on the second-floor unit where Montgomery's father, Adam Montgomery, and his now estranged wife, Kayla, once lived. A woman called Darcy Hambleton, who lives behind the apartment complex, told a reporter that she briefly saw police enter the building on Monday, and it seemed casual. But by 9 a.m. Tuesday, Hambleton said she saw a full-scale investigation from her balcony, which included 6 to 7 officers behind the building at any given time. She added that she saw an individual in an FBI t-shirt and one man in a hazmat suit, and noted that the front of the complex is a media circus. Investigators were later seen taking a refrigerator wrapped in biohazard tape from the apartment and loading it into a truck. A camera was also used to search the sewer in front of the building. "I knew about the case since 2021 when Harmony was initially reported missing. It's all over Manchester on signs and billboards," Hambleton said. "But I had no idea that her father had lived behind me." Noting that she has a 7-year-old daughter herself, Hambleton added that her heart is in my stomach right now, thinking that something could have happened to that little girl here. After this raid, Crystal Sorey stated publicly, "I know in my heart this is no longer a rescue mission. They're looking for a body." In a disturbing follow-up, Kelsey Small, one-time girlfriend of the father of missing Harmony Montgomery, was recently found dead in Manchester, police said. Small, 27, was with Adam Montgomery when police found the homeless couple sleeping in a car on December 31, 2021, in the early days of the search for Harmony. "The cause of death is still pending, but it does not appear suspicious," said police spokeswoman Heather Hamill. According to court records, police were on their 4th day of searching for Harmony when they found Adam Montgomery and Small sleeping in a car on New Year's Eve. The car was parked on Harvell Street on the west side, close to the Gifford Street home where the Montgomery family had lived 2 years earlier. Small told police she had been romantically involved with Adam Montgomery for more than a year. She knew he had 4 children from previous relationships, but he was not in touch with any of them and never talked about Harmony, she told police. She had no idea where Harmony might be. Police eventually arrested Adam Montgomery, but never charged Small with any crime. So what happened to Harmony Montgomery, and where is she now? If her father is innocent, why did he never report her disappearance? And when her mother, Crystal, tried to find her daughter, why weren't police and the local child protective services on her side? As this case unfolds, we hope that Harmony's mother finds the justice she deserves, whether her daughter is dead or living. Police have stated that Harmony is 8, and she should be wearing glasses due to her blindness in one eye. It's a heartbreaking story, and we hope with everything we've got that somehow, against all odds, Harmony Montgomery might still be found alive.